I saved a dying, destitute fortune-teller on the street after a bowl of hot soup. He uttered a low prophecy, "You are born with a phoenix's fate, go immediately to the west of the city, and in the future, 10,000 people will kneel before you." My heart remained clear, every word of this was true. I was just a fish seller from the countryside, but in my previous life I ascended to the Empress's throne, receiving the worship of all under heaven. This time, however, I merely shook my head. Indifferently, "My fish aren't sold out yet, I don't have time to go." 01. Girl, how can this sky-high wealth and wonderful fortune be thousands of times better than you sweating in the sun selling fish? Seeing that I remained unmoved, the old man frowned, leaned in closer, and spoke with a touch of anxious justification. "Do you not believe me? Do you think I am a flashy, deceitful con artist of the martial world?" My fingertip paused briefly, and I continued to gently stroke the slick fish. Scales in the basket, eyes lowered, not lifting but deep down, I already knew the truth. How could I not believe him after all? He was my adoptive father in my previous life, who protected me in every way after I entered the palace, offered discreet guidance, and even taught me to read and write. He is the celestial diviner most trusted by His Majesty, and also the mentor of the current crown prince, Murong-Yang. His mastery of fate and divination has never been false. His power and knowledge are second to none. In the end, I never said these words out loud, still silent with downcast eyes, which was taken as agreement with his words. After a pause, the national advisor sighed. "Are you really not going to give it a try?" My fingertips paused briefly, then slowly shook my head. "No, I'm not going, Elder. Perhaps what you say is true, but I've lived in this village since I was young. I've heard tales of the intrigues and deceptions within those red-walled palaces, and I have no liking for that kind of life. Instead of worrying about my life every day, isn't it better for me to be a steady fishmonger?" The imperial advisor looked at the determination in my eyes and finally let out a sigh, his expression a mix of desolation and acceptance. "Enough, enough. Fate is of one's own making. Since you are unwilling, I will not force you. Just a maid. You must remember that a calamity will befall you soon. Be careful in all things and protect yourself." I nodded gently, without saying another word. Seeing that my mind was made up, the national advisor offered no further persuasion. After resting for a moment, he rose and left, his figure gradually disappearing at the end of the street. I looked down at the fish in my hand, just sold out, and sighed. In truth, since I was young, what I've held in my heart has never been the good marriage my mother speaks of. Mother always nags me, saying that Zhao Dazhuang from the neighboring village is honest and sturdy, strong and capable of hard work. Marrying him would mean never worrying about food or drink, having someone to lean on for life, truly a secure and stable home. But every time I see Zhao Dazhuang's big, burly figure, I feel no joy at all. I prefer gentle, delicate scholar types, dressed in a blue robe, holding a book, with soft eyes and a refined manner, their very speech carrying the scent of ink and parchment. Just looking at it fills my heart with joy. Because of this, I've had no small number of arguments with my mother. She always pokes my forehead and sighs. What use is being gentle and weak, unable to bear burdens with shoulders or lift loads with hands? Scholars and bookworms have always been the most fickle. They only know how to speak sweet words. How could they ever truly be sincere with you in daily life? Spending all your days reading those deceiving storybooks, can that fill your stomach? But I refused to believe it. Covering my forehead, I ran outside, stubbornly thinking, the gentle and refined scholars in those illustrated books were all utterly devoted. Surely I could meet one who was different. Back then, I would listen to the street storytellers' tales dozens of times over. I even imagined that, like in a storybook, I might pick up a handsome young gentleman to know each other, stay together, and live a peaceful life. But I never expected that this dream would come true. I really did pick up a handsome young gentleman, only it wasn't as sweetly ever after as the storybooks made it out to be. Sure enough, as my mother used to say, everything in those storybooks is lies. Thinking of this, I let out a sigh. Oh well, after all, I've been given another chance at life. This time, I just won't pick up any men. To my surprise, the moment I reached the courtyard gate, my little sister grabbed me in a panic. "Sis, There's a man in the woodshed out back, he's covered in blood and about to die. I'm so scared, my heart sank inexplicably, and I followed my little sister as she hurried toward the backyard. Pushing open the dilapidated wooden door of the woodshed, a thick scent of blood rushed to meet us. The man lying on the ground had torn clothes and a pale, fragile face, but those exquisitely defined features, so handsome they seemed carved into his very bones, I could never forget them. Even to my dying day it is Murongyang 02. I still saved him, but not out of lingering affection. After all, if a grown man dies in my backyard and the neighbors across the street see it, I would be unable to explain myself with words from head to toe. From now on, I won't be able to run the fish stall anymore, and my family will also get entangled in a lawsuit. Besides, upon careful thought, in the previous life he didn't treat me all that badly. After Murongyang ascended the throne, there were many consorts in the harem, but he never mistreated me. The dignity of an empress and the due rewards, none of it was ever lacking for me. Everything I eat, wear, and use is of the finest quality. When some in the palace once looked down on me for being a fish seller, he stood up for me on the spot. From then on, no one dared to slight me. A queen of rural origin, he is very kind to the people, and kind to my little sister and mother. But there is one thing that is not quite so good. He does not love me. In a past life, on my deathbed, I lay on a cold palace couch, listening to the palace maids whispering, and only then did I learn that he had already issued the decree to have the prematurely deceased concubine Shu buried with him in the royal mausoleum after 100 years. She is the person whom he kept close to his heart, and I, a legitimate empress of the inner court, can only be buried in a corner of the royal mausoleum, not even qualified to share a tomb with him. Later, he came to my grave and stood there for a long time. He said I was wonderful, but simply not the one his heart desired. He was no tyrant, nor did he treat me harshly in the slightest. He gave me the most honorable position under heaven, yet he never gave me his true heart. What he showed me was the courtesy between sovereign and subject, a sense of duty, but never love. But what use is a loveless couple, not even qualified to share the same grave after death, left with nothing but a solitary tomb? Such a wholehearted yet unloved life once is enough. I gritted my teeth, turned back into the house to fetch the wound healing medicine and clean cloth strips, then boiled some hot water and carefully cleaned his wounds little by little as my hands worked. My heart was full of doubt. In my previous life, I clearly found him at the foot of the mountains on the outskirts of town, so how did he inexplicably end up in my backyard in this life? As the thought flashed through my mind, my hand suddenly froze. Could it be that he, like me, has also been reborn? If that's the case, then so be it. Once he wakes up, we can lay out all the grievances from the previous life. From now on, we will sever all ties, each go their own way, with no further involvement. The sky was gradually darkening. Just as I finished tidying up the medicine bowl and walked out of the woodshed, my younger sister peeked in at the unconscious man, then clutched the corner of my clothes and murmured softly, "Sis, you brought a man home, won't mother scold you for it?" I turned back to look at Murongyang's pale, bloodless face, paused for a moment, and said softly, "I suppose so. Not only would she scold me, she might even grab me by the ear and give me a beating that very evening." Hurried footsteps came from outside the door. Speak of the devil! The moment my mother pushed the door open and swept the room with her eyes, she charged straight into the woodshed, reached out, seized my ear, and twisted it upward with such force that her anger seemed to burst right through the top of her head. "You wretched girl!" Getting bolder and bolder. "How dare you secretly pick up a man and bring him home?" I frowned in pain, not daring to make a sound. My mother glared at me, then turned to look at the unconscious Murongyang lying on the straw. Seeing his slender figure and pale, delicate face, she immediately furrowed her brow tightly. "If you're going to pick up someone, at least find one who's strong and capable of work. Picking such a frail one, unable to carry or lift, what use can he be?" Rubbing my sore ear, I whispered in defense, "I couldn't just stand by and watch him die in the backyard. If a death really happens, our whole family will face legal trouble, and the neighbors will gossip." My mother was taken aback. She looked at the unconscious Murongyang, and most of her anger subsided. She said in a low voice, "Then take good care of him. and as soon as he can get up, send him away immediately. Don't let him stay a moment longer than necessary. I understand." Seeing this, Mother grumbled as she headed out. She paused at the door, then pulled a piece of glutinous rice cake from her pocket and tossed it to me, thin as a wooden pole. Then he grumbled and headed back to the main room, rubbing my reddened ear. I held the glutinous rice cake in my hand and finished it in just a few bites. It was very sweet, actually. Mother is the kind of person with a sharp tongue but a soft heart. In my previous life, when I became the Empress, she was very worried. She wants me to do well, but she's also afraid that if I do too well, others might become jealous. Luckily, in her previous life, she was broad-minded enough to live to a ripe old age. Thinking of this, I look at Murongyang in front of me. Those who are severely injured are most prone to high fever and seizures, so I dare not leave, but I don't want him to step into my bedroom, so I have no choice but to keep watch in the woodshed. I moved a low stool to sit in the corner, gathered my collar, and quietly watched him in his drowsy sleep, not daring to fall into a deep slumber all night. In the dead of night, silence surrounded everything. In my hazy drowsiness, I suddenly felt a heavy gaze fall upon me, burning and intent. I jolted awake and looked up to meet those open eyes directly. Murongyang had already woken up, weakly leaning against the pile of straw. His eyes were heavy and fixed on me without moving. Seeing this, I instinctively raised my hand to touch his forehead. It wasn't too hot, and the anxious knot in my heart gradually eased. I said calmly, "It's okay, the fever hasn't returned." His lips were pale and dry. He struggled to open his mouth, his voice hoarse and faint. "Kite." Hearing that call, my heart stirred slightly. As expected, he had also been reborn, which was why he deviated from the path of his previous life and precisely found my backyard, asking me to save him, knowing full well that I loathed the conflicts of the harem and despised the feeling of loving without being loved. He still came knocking like this. It's really frustrating and helpless. I sighed and said calmly, "Say no more, just focus on healing, and leave as soon as you recover." 03 In the following days, Murongyang's injuries gradually improved. He was able to slowly get up and walk around normally. Her mother, who was always frugal and usually reluctant to eat more than a bite of meat, had unexpectedly bought fresh meat for the first time. Not only did she make meat stew and stir-fried dishes, but she also prepared 3 meals a day with great care. I knew in my heart that it wasn't because she cared for this stranger. She just wanted him to recover quickly and leave soon, so that he wouldn't bring trouble to the family. I don't really mind either way. Being able to have a few bites of meat is already a rare treat for me. As for his leaving, that was inevitable. Days passed by blandly like this. He and I hardly spoke. I would just change his medicine and then leave. The task of delivering meals fell to my younger sister. I didn't want any further contact with him beyond changing the medicine. On the day he fully recovered and could move about freely, I packed my fish basket early to go sell fish at the market. I had just picked up the bamboo basket full of fresh fish when Murongyang quickly stepped forward. He reached out to take it from me, wanting to carry it on my behalf. I sidestepped and firmly refused. "With your noble status, there's no need to do rough work." I looked up at him, my tone direct and distant. "Since your injury has healed, you should leave now." He froze in place, his eyes dimming, and spoke with a hint of unease. "You blame me?" I let out a soft laugh and admitted openly, "Yes, I blame you. In my previous life, I gave everything I had, only to end up without even a peaceful resting place after death." "What do you mean by no blame? I'm not that noble, nor am I an immortal, so of course I have worldly thoughts, Your Highness. In this life I only want to stay with my family, sell fish peacefully, and never get involved in the struggles of the powerful again, let alone bring disaster upon myself. Someone like you should never have stayed in this backstreet alley. Besides, you already have someone in your heart. So why waste your time here? Go now, quickly, go find the one you wish to protect." With that, I picked up my fish basket and turned to leave. He hurried after me and called out, "Are you on?" Don't say any more." I cut him off, my voice rising slightly. "If you feel that I saved your life and want to repay me, or for the sake of our past acquaintance, then give me some silver as a settlement for this life-saving favor. From now on, we owe each other nothing. Don't hover around me anymore. Let each go their own way." He pressed his lips together, his face pale, with an expression in his eyes that I could not fathom. After a long pause, he replied in a hoarse voice, "Fine." That day, he left behind a heavy bag of silver, but in the end, he turned and walked away, watching his receding figure. I felt no reluctance, only complete relief. Life returned to its calm. I still went fishing and sold fish every day, taking care of my mother and little sister. Plain and steady. I thought this steadiness would last forever, but I never expected drive away one Murong Yang and pick up another man that day. After selling my fish and heading home, I found Lu Qingyun in the grass by the river. His entire body radiated a fierce aura, his expression cold and sharp, exuding a distant aloofness that made him seem unapproachable. He even carried a hint of a ruthless keep-away demeanor, starkly different from Murong Yang's gentle and refined elegance. I didn't want to meddle in other people's business, but in the end, he collapsed near my house. Left with no choice, I dragged him back to the woodshed in the backyard that night. My mother found out and, just like a month ago, kicked the door open, grabbed me by the ear, and scolded, "Shen Muyun, are you crazy? Have you become addicted to picking up stray men?" I covered my ears and dared not talk back. Perhaps heaven has given me a chance to start over, but also intends to add a few more hardships along the way. How is it that I keep running into men who are about to die? However, my mother didn't say anything more. She just cast a faint glance at Lu Qingyun. Compared to the last one, this one is a bit sturdier. I covered my forehead with my hand and said nothing. After Lu Qingyun woke up, he never spoke much if I didn't ask. He wouldn't say a word, keeping a cold face all day long. Even when I brought him medicine and food, he never once uttered a word of thanks, completely indifferent. Only later did I learn from the neighbors that he was known in the neighboring village as a cold-tempered man, the only son in his family, with a solitary and fierce disposition that made no one dare to provoke him easily. As the news spread further, the villagers all saw him staying in my backyard all day long, and they began gossiping that there was something unusual between us. The rumors gradually grew louder. When my mother found out, she became anxious and restless, fearing that I would become the subject of gossip. One day, the neighbors were again chattering at the gate, pointing at me and at him in the woodshed. "This Shen Muyun is already over 16, right? Still not married. Who knows what she's being so picky about? Do you even have to ask? It's obviously sneaking around to keep a man. TSK, TSK, TSK. She looks like such an obedient girl. Who would have thought she'd have such wild ideas, actually daring to hide a man secretly? If word of this gets out, she'll have brought utter shame to the Shen family." Foul words drifted into my mother's ears one after another, and she was instantly displeased. Without a word, she grabbed the broom in the corner, swung her arm, and hurled it at the group of gossips. The broom handle hit the ground with a dull thud, startling them into stepping back. "Bullshit. A bunch of good-for-nothings with nothing better to do, spending your days slandering other people's daughters. My Muyun is pure and innocent. How dare you smear her name as you please? If any of you dares say another word, I'll skin you alive right now, and let's see if you still dare to wag your tongues." I never wanted to argue much with these people. A clear conscience fears no accusation. I merely couldn't bear to stand by and saved someone in distress. How could that be called improper behavior? But I could endure it. My mother, however, could not. Seeing that my mother was about to lose control, my mind went blank and I blurted out, "Stop talking nonsense. He and I have long been engaged, and we are to be married next month." The moment the voice fell, the previously noisy murmuring at the courtyard gate abruptly ceased, and everyone fell silent. My heart skipped a beat, and only then did I realize belatedly what I had said, feeling a momentary panic. But the words had already been spoken. What was done could not be undone, so I had no choice but to brace myself and stay where I was. Lu Qingyun probably didn't hear it. Right, I thought to myself just then. The sound of orderly footsteps suddenly came from outside the courtyard gate, breaking the eerie silence. I instinctively looked up, and the moment I saw who was at the door, I froze completely. Murong Yang, dressed in luxurious robes, had long shed his former sickly frailty, fully displaying the dignity of a crown prince. The attendants following behind him had heard every word I just said. He stood still, his face instantly darkening, the air around him growing several degrees colder. You want to get married. 04 Murong Yang's voice was icy cold, cloud patterns subtly shifting on the dark gold-threaded crown prince's daily robes. As his oppressive aura spread outward, the villagers watching at the entrance of the courtyard fell silent in an instant. They shrank their necks, both scared and unable to resist sneaking curious glances, their low murmurs all but choked in their throats. Ignoring the probing looks of others, he strode straight toward me on his long legs. The hem of his brocade robe swept the ground, the breeze it stirred carrying the chilling air of nobility. I clutched my clothes, my fingertips turning white, my heartbeat racing out of rhythm. I secretly wondered why on earth this imperial scion had come back again. Seeing this, my mother immediately stepped in front of me, her expression wary and flustered. She quietly tugged at my sleeve and urgently whispered, "Evening Cloud, who is he? Since when do you know such an important person?" I thought for a moment, back when my mother first saw Murong Yang. His face was covered in blood, so she probably didn't recognize him. "Mother, he was the first person I brought back." My voice was barely audible. My mother narrowed her eyes and swept her gaze over Murong Yang's luxurious attire, the translucent jade pendant at his waist, and the sternly arrayed attendants behind him, then drew a sharp breath. I never thought that sickly weakling would turn out to be someone with hidden wealth and power. I lowered my eyes and said, softly, word by word, "After all, he is the current crown prince." As the words fell, my mother nearly fainted, but I reached out and held her firmly. Murong Yang had already stopped in front of me, his deep gaze fixed intently on mine, and he said in a low voice, "Mu Yun, I would like to have a few words with you alone. Is that all right, Your Highness? Please speak your mind freely. There's no need to hold back." I looked up to meet his gaze, forcing down the panic in my heart. His brows furrowed deeply as he stepped forward, pulling me into the room without regard for onlookers. For the first time, his voice carried a rare mix of anguish and distress, stripped of the crown prince's usual cold hardness. "Let me ask you again, are you getting married? Who are you going to marry? Shen Muyun, are you abandoning me?" Before I could speak, he had already begun to pour out his feelings on his own, his voice low and heavy with the regrets of a past life. "In our past life, we were buried together. I was not buried with her. Her must be the imperial consort." Only later did I realize that he was indeed to be buried with me. I had misunderstood him. But it was true that he did not love me, and it was also true that he doted on someone else in my previous life. I should have known that the last thing an emperor can give is love, yet I kept hoping. But having lived again, now I know, and I no longer want it. He said he had always believed that the noble consort of peasant origin, who once wandered through the countryside as a child, was the one who gave him a warm candy to ease his hunger and cold. He said he deliberately claimed kinship, and he believed it. It was only later that he learned the one who had given him that warmth back then was always me. Hearing this, I desperately tried to recall my childhood, only to be left with the bitter memory of days spent fishing just to trade for food, never having enough to eat, having no memory of anything related to the candy. I calmly spoke, "Your Highness, I have long forgotten all those childhood memories. My early years were very hard. If I had a piece of candy, I would clutch it tightly in my hand and couldn't bear to eat it myself, let alone share it with anyone else. You have mistaken me for someone else. Whether it is or isn't, it no longer matters." Murong Yang's eyes were obsessively intense, carrying the innate imperiousness of one born into the imperial family. "I'm not here to verify the past over a piece of candy. I came to tell you that no matter what has happened, you are the one I love. Mu Yun, is the man you're going to marry better than me? Does he wield more power than I do? Is he better looking than I am?" He reached out and seized my wrist, his palm burning hot. "Mu Yun, come back to the palace with me. Don't marry him, all right?" Before I could refuse, a cold, elegant figure suddenly rushed from the direction of the woodshed to stand before me, moving so fast that only a blur remained. It was Lu Qingyun 05. He usually wore plain, coarse cloth clothes, spoke little, and quietly stayed in the woodshed recovering from his injuries. I simply took him for an ordinary scholar in distress and never asked further. But now, standing before Murong Yang, His presence was in no way inferior to that of the crown prince. With his back straight and eyes as cold as ice, he raised his hand and fiercely pushed aside Murongyang's grip on me, shielding me behind him. Murongyang's expression completely darkened, and murderous intent gradually emerged. In his eyes, "How dare you? Do you know who I am, Your Highness the Crown Prince?" "Of course I know." Lu Qingyun's voice was cold, without a trace of fear, as he looked sharply at Murongyang. "I don't care if you are a crown prince or an emperor. If Muyun is unwilling to go with you, you must not force her. And who are you to dare speak to me like that?" Murongyang narrowed his eyes and looked Lu Qingyun up and down. It was clear he had already sent people to investigate him, yet had failed to uncover his background. Lu Qingyun parted his lips slightly and said in a faint tone, "The second legitimate son of the Duke of Zhenghua Manor, Lu Qingyun." These words sent shockwaves through the crowd. I stood frozen in place, my face full of disbelief. The Duke of Zhenghua Manor was a prestigious family wielding significant military power and dominating the court, known for their unwavering loyalty and deeply trusted by the royal family. But everyone knew that the Duke of Zhen only had one eldest son. Was Lu Qingyun actually the second son of the Duke of Zhen's mansion? Such a noble identity. Yet in my previous life, I never knew a thing about it. Murongyang's pupils contracted slightly, clearly caught off guard as well. But he was truly the future emperor, and merely glanced at him. "You wish to marry her." The two were at odds with each other, the atmosphere tense and on the verge of erupting into a full-blown dispute. In a panic, I quickly reached out and tugged at Lu Qingyun's sleeve. Standing on tiptoe, I leaned close to his ear and whispered, so softly that only the two of us could hear, "Lu Qingyun, for the sake of my saving your life, please don't expose our fake engagement just yet. Help me hold the line and get rid of the crown prince first. I'm begging you." Flustered and anxious, I only wanted to send off the crown prince, someone I could not afford to offend, unaware that a flicker of amusement had appeared in Lu Qingyun's eyes after hearing my words. That smile dispelled the chill around him, carrying a trace of delight. "Yes." Lu Qingyun did not evade at all, glancing sideways at me behind him. A faint trace of tenderness flickered in his cool eyes, vanishing in an instant. "I will marry her and protect her for life. Lu Qingyun is truly my greatest benefactor." The act was indeed convincing. "Looks like quite a bit of my pork is going to go to waste again. You should know that sitting alone in power, ruling the world, there are things you can never give her." Lu Qingyun met his gaze without yielding an inch. "Power and honor are but external possessions. What I can give her is the peaceful life she truly wants, the freedom of not being trapped in the deep palace, reading others' expressions, or living in constant fear. You can't give me these." The next second, Lu Qingyun took my hand in return, and before I could react, he leaned down slightly. Then, a soft and warm sensation touched my cheek. Gone in an instant, he kissed me. I widened my eyes and leaned against his chest in a daze, utterly incredulous. This man, who was usually silent and exuded an air of aloof coldness, had lips that were so soft, they even carried a faint scent of grass and wood, which instantly threw my thoughts into disarray. Lu Qingyun straightened up, keeping his arm around my waist, and turned to look at Murongyang, whose face had turned ashen. In a flat tone yet full of provocation, "More importantly, she has feelings for me." Murongyang was so enraged that his aura surged violently, staring at the hand Lu Qingyun had placed on my waist. The murderous intent in his eyes was almost overflowing, but in the end, he managed to control his emotions and said in a deep voice, "Fine, but I have one condition. In 3 days, the capital will hold a special autumn imperial examination, open to all regardless of status. Anyone with talent and learning may participate. Lu Qingyun, if you truly have the ability to marry her, then come first in this examination. Let me see that you have enough strength to protect her and are worthy to stand by her side. I don't want you relying on the status and power your father gave you. What I want to see is your true ability. If you achieve this, I will give you my blessing. But if you fail," this was Murongyang's concession, and also the challenge he posed to Lu Qingyun. Lu Qingyun's eyes were cold and clear. Without the slightest hesitation, he agreed on the spot. "Fine." Murongyang cast one last deep look at me, his eyes full of unwillingness and complexity. then he turned and left in anger. With his attendants, the villagers at the entrance of the courtyard did not dare to disperse quietly until the crown prince's procession had completely disappeared at the village entrance. This farce had finally come to a temporary close. 06. In the days that followed, Lu Qingyun completely transformed into a different person. He had never been fond of literature or calligraphy, his temperament leaning more toward that of a military general, and he had always loved wielding swords and spears. Yet, for the sake of that promise, he shut himself away all day, studying diligently. The woodshed was piled high with books I had borrowed. He would rise before dawn to memorize them, and late into the night he still burned the midnight oil, his notes filling page after page, the tips of his fingers worn smooth with calluses. I did not ask him about the matter concerning the Duke of Zhengguo. After all, in my previous life, this person had never existed. Perhaps he also carries pain in his heart, so why should I rub salt into his wound? But watching him struggle so desperately, I felt so guilty that I couldn't help but say, Lu Qingyun, you don't actually have to do this, we're just putting on a show to get rid of the crown prince. You don't need to take the exam for my sake, it's not worth all this hardship. Lu Qingyun put down his pen and looked up at me. His cool eyes were full of seriousness, without a trace of jest. Who said I was just putting on an act? I was taken aback, momentarily. At a loss for words, he stood up and walked over to me, looking at me with tender eyes and a firm tone. Shen Muyun, from the moment you saved me and brought me back, I never intended for this to be just an act with you. I truly want to marry you. And it is also true that I took the examinations and strove for a future for you. Murongyang is right. If I want to protect you, I need a real identity, not as the second young master of the Duke of Zhen's mansion, but as someone who earned his own. Standing through effort, my heart gave a violent throb, and I flusteredly looked away, unsure how to respond. That night, my mother took my hand and sat with me in the yard, gazing at the light spilling from the woodshed. She was uncharacteristically gentle. Mu Yun, I've lived most of my life, and I've never been wrong about people. The way Lu Qingyun looks at you, that undisguised affection, comes from a heart that truly cares for you. Though he holds a noble status, he is willing to set aside his pride for you and study assiduously for the imperial exams. Such devotion is exceedingly rare. I pressed my lips together, my heart a jumble of conflicting emotions, yet I knew full well that my mother spoke nothing but the truth. Lu Qingyun's sacrifices, I have seen them all and kept them close to my heart, but I simply cannot respond in kind. The days passed one by one, and the day of the exam arrived as scheduled. Lu Qingyun, dressed in plain clothes, went to take the exam with calm composure. Without relying on any influence from the Duke Zhengguo's mansion, he stood out among many talented scholars by his own efforts and achieved the top score. On the day the results were announced, the entire village was in an uproar. No one had expected that the destitute man picked up by Shen Muyun possessed such extraordinary talent, but Lu Qingyun did not stop there. He climbed step by step with his talent and ability. He entered court as an official, remained upright and incorruptible, performed repeated extraordinary deeds, and ultimately rose to the position of Grand Tutor. Wielding great power and influence, he earned the deep trust of the emperor and became a figure respected by the entire court. He stood in a position above all others, with enough power and ability to fulfill the promise he had made long ago. But as I look at him, now so glorious and successful, all I feel inside is inferiority and a desire to retreat. I am just a fishmonger from the marketplace, low-born and illiterate, a world apart from the status he holds today. Even if he were willing to marry me now, as he rises to high office, he will inevitably have to associate with noble and powerful families. Someone like me would only become his weak spot, a target for others' ridicule. One day, he would meet an aristocratic lady from a well-matched family and forget the promises made today. So that day I went to Lu Qingyun and said, Lu Qingyun, you've won the examination, kept your promise to the crown prince, and now you have the power to protect me, but I'm just a fishmonger's daughter, unworthy of you now. In the future, with your bright prospects, you will meet someone better. Let the agreement between us end here. After saying that, without waiting for his response, I turned and ran. Even as he called my name from behind, I did not look back. I know I am cowardly, But I cannot give him anything better, nor do I want to hold him back. Not long after, Murongyang ascended the throne and became the sovereign emperor. He sent people to find me many times, even came to the village in trance himself hoping to see me, but I refused to meet him each time. I completely cut off all ties with him. After all, he is an emperor with 3,000 concubines in his. Even if he holds a place for me in his heart, he cannot give me the stability and devotion I truly desire. The regrets of the past life need not be repeated in this one. Murongyang ultimately did not press the matter further. However, in the many years since his ascension to the throne, he never appointed an empress, leaving the harem completely empty, a secret known to all under heaven. As for the imperial consort who had misled him in his previous life, she ultimately never married into the royal family. Instead, she was wedded early into an ordinary noble house, living out her days in peace. As for Lu Qingyun, after the day I left, he never came looking for me again. I thought that, in the end, he had finally let it go. He holds a high position and has a brilliant future ahead of him. So naturally he would no longer cling to someone as ordinary as me, a mere fish seller. I heard that he is assisting the new emperor in court, reforming the government, and working with utter devotion, becoming the new emperor's most capable right-hand man, but he still has never married, and there is no woman by his side. Time passed in the blink of an eye, and a whole year went by. I've long passed my 20th birthday, becoming what the villagers call an old maid. My mother frets daily over my marriage prospects. Whenever she looks at me, she can't help but sigh. Youth, those two men you brought back all those years ago were both of noble birth, yet you failed to secure either of them. Now you're already 20, are you truly going to be an old maid for the rest of your life? Enough, enough. If you don't want to marry, your mother will support you for a lifetime. There's nothing wrong with that. I smiled and took my mother's arm, my heart at peace. Mother, this is fine. I don't want to marry. I just want to stay with you and live a peaceful life. Later, with the money I had saved, I opened a small food shop. I run a small shop selling some specialty fisherman's snacks and side dishes. The business isn't booming, but it's enough to support my mother and me. Life is plain but stable. My little sister has also grown up, having held her coming-of-age ceremony, blossoming into a graceful young woman. One day, as dusk was falling, I tidied up the shop and was about to close the door and lock up when a familiar, cool voice slowly sounded behind me. Closing so early, are you still serving customers? My body went rigid as I slowly turned around. Under the dim light, Lu Qingyun stood at the doorway. He had shed his court robes and was dressed simply in plain, light-colored cloth. Washed to a faint pallor, gone was his usual air of power and authority. Instead, he exuded the gentle warmth of an ordinary scholar. His features remained cool and aloof, but a soft smile lingered at the corners of his lips as he gazed quietly at me. Shen Muyun, I hold no official position or rank now. I'm just an ordinary mortal. I wonder if someone like me could catch the eye of the boss lady. Could I ask the boss lady to give me a title, to let me be a little boss, so that for the rest of my life I can stay by your side, watching over this little shop, watching over you, for my sake? He climbed to the highest position with all his might and fulfilled his promise, and for my sake, he voluntarily gave up all power and authority, shed all his glory, and returned to being an ordinary person. I looked at the tenderness and determination in his eyes, felt my eyes grow slightly warm, and finally couldn't help but smile as I softly replied, "Well, let me think." The evening breeze brushed past, carrying the aroma of food from the shops, along with a heart full of joy and peace. Fishing lights dotted the scene, lighting the way home for those returning, and illuminating every passing year of the rest of our lives. Murongyang, extras. Having ascended the throne for 30 years, I rule over the vast lands of the great Qi dynasty. The nation is prosperous and peaceful, all seas pay homage, and I am rightly called a great sage emperor through the ages. Yet the deep palace is silent. The harem stands empty with no consorts or concubines. In this immense imperial palace, I alone keep vigil through the long nights. All the court officials, one after another, submit memorials, urging me to fill the harem and produce heirs, so as to secure the foundation of the state. They say I, as the emperor, care deeply for the people and embrace the world in my heart, with no time for romance, a sage ruler untainted by earthly desires. But they never know that I am not without feeling. It is just that this imperial heart has room for only one person, Shenmuyun, from beginning to end, and no space for anyone else, not even a fraction. The pains of the past life still pierce my heart and bones. I dare not even recall them to this day. Mistaking another's kindness for hers, I utterly betrayed Shenmuyun, whose eyes and heart were filled only with me, trapping her within these deep palace walls. The gnawing remorse has accompanied me through countless days and nights. In this life, I no longer care. Whether it was her who gave me that piece of candy back then no longer matters. I only know that the one my heart desires is her, and only her. But fate plays cruel tricks, after all. The twists and turns, I have still lost her in the end. Lu Qingyun, that young man, is far braver than I am. I am very selfish, knowing he disliked studying, yet I made that bet with him. But I never expected that to protect Shenmuyun, he would endure years of hard study, excel in the imperial examinations, overcome countless obstacles, and rise to become the highest minister. He even reached the position of Grand Tutor, gaining the power to rival me and fulfilling his vow to protect her for life. Even rarer was that he understood her. He knew well that Shenmuyun had never wanted a phoenix coronet or bridal finery, nor the riches of a deep palace, nor did she seek overwhelming power or honored glory. She simply wanted an ordinary life filled with the warmth of the marketplace, plain and free. So he dared to give up the power he had spent a lifetime building, take off his official robes, shed all his glory, and return to being an ordinary person, just to stay by her side and live a peaceful life. But I cannot. I am the emperor of the great Qi dynasty, the lord of all under heaven. From the day I ascended the throne, my life has no longer belonged to me alone. Thousands of miles of rivers and mountains, the safety of the realm, and the livelihoods of millions of people, all are responsibilities I cannot cast off from my shoulders. I can give her every treasure in the world, but not the freedom she longs for most. Though I possess the entire realm, I am not even worthy to stand close to her. In my past life, it was I who trapped her in the deep palace and destroyed her life. In this life, I will never repeat the same mistakes. She wishes for a peaceful and quiet life with Lu Qingyun, so I will grant her complete freedom and never disturb her. All I can do is safeguard this vast empire, ensure peace under heaven, and let there be no more wars or chaos in the world, so that she may live out her life in safety and tranquility in a peaceful mortal world. By protecting the realm, I protect her. Watching her live a simple life with the one she loves, growing old together, fills my heart with regrets, yet also with deep consolation. In this life, I have been a capable emperor, but in the end, I am nothing but a sinner who has failed Shenmuyun. If there is a next life, I wish never to be born into the imperial family again, to stay away from the strife of the court, and to rule over no vast empire, only to be an ordinary country lad, growing up alongside her as childhood sweethearts. Rise at dawn to farm and weave, return home at dusk, fish and cook with her, chat about everyday matters, share simple meals, and stay together from morning to night. One lifetime, one couple, that is enough. The end. That's the end of the first story. Stay tuned, the next one is even more exciting. My mother spent her whole life locked in a petty rivalry with her archenemy from her maiden days. Yet no matter what, the rival always managed to outdo her. If my mother bought a fine white jade hairpin, the archenemy would buy 2 fine phoenix-headed hairpins. If my mother was married with a 10-li bridal procession, the archenemy would get married with a 100-li fragrant celebration. Finally, after her rival gave birth to only one daughter after marriage, my mother gritted her teeth in frustration and lied about having given birth to a pair of dragon and phoenix twins. Thus, I play the role of the eldest daughter at home and the second young master outside. The eldest daughter caught the eye of the eldest son of the Pei family at a flower viewing banquet in the morning, and the second young master was hit by the second daughter of the Pei family's embroidered ball on the street in the afternoon. The Pei family is a top-tier noble clan. By becoming in-laws with the Pei family, one could keep their rival trampled underfoot for a lifetime. My mother couldn't bear to turn down this marriage alliance. Who would have thought that Madame Pei would demand that my family hold both the wedding and the dowry ceremony on The same day. What, am I supposed to play 2 roles when I get to the Pei family as well? How is this supposed to work? I packed my bags and fled overnight. But halfway through I heard that the second Miss Pei had fallen into the water while out boating and was rescued by a bandit, ruining her reputation. Now that bandit has come to ask for her hand in marriage, and Miss Pei is at home, throwing a tantrum and threatening to kill herself. I turned right around, hoisted my bags, and ran straight back. Leaping over the wall of the Pei family compound, I kicked open the second young lady's door and said, "Don't die, I'll marry you." Pei Xingyu, still with her neck in the noose, slowly turned her head on the stool to look at me. Second Master Yu, she recognized me, her tear-streaked face full of bewilderment. "Why are you here?" "Of course I climbed over the wall to get in," I replied with a clear conscience. Casually dropping my bundle on the floor, I pulled her off the stool, yanked the white silk down from the beam, crumpled it into a ball in a few moves, and tossed it into the corner. "The walls of your Pei family mansion aren't built high enough. There's a crooked jujube tree by the northwest corner, way too easy to climb." Pei Xingyu stared at me blankly, tears still on her face. Her lips quivered as if she wanted to say something scolding. After all, she was the legitimate second daughter of the Pei family, always known for her propriety and adherence to decorum. Upon hearing the words "climb over the wall," she should have called for someone to throw me out, but she opened her mouth, and in the end, nothing came out. Instead, she slowly crouched down, buried her face in her knees, and sobbed so hard her shoulders trembled uncontrollably. I sighed and crouched down beside her. "Stop crying. It's nothing such a big deal. I already said I'd marry you." Pei Xingyu jerked her head up, glaring at me with reddened eyes. Those beautiful eyes were full of disbelief. Second young Master Yu, do you have any idea what you're saying? I already. What's wrong with you? I pretended to play dumb. So you fell into the water while sightseeing, got soaked to the skin, and was rescued by a strange man. What's the big deal? My words were too blunt. Pei Xingyu's face instantly turned as pale as paper, even her lips losing their color. She bit her lip and shrank back, as if my remark had stabbed her in the most painful spot. "Since you already know, why did you still marry me? Don't you care about your own reputation?" "I don't care," I shrugged indifferently. Face is something intangible and invisible. Why would I care about it over something as important as a human life? But I do care. Pei Xingyu sank to the ground, tears falling in dismay seeing her like this. I felt a faint ache in my heart. To be honest, I didn't actually know Pei Xingyu well. As the eldest daughter of the Jiyu family, I always kept a low profile to conceal my identity and rarely socialized with others. But when I moved about outside disguised as the second son of the Jiyu family, I would occasionally run into her at banquets. She was the legitimate daughter of the Pei family, extraordinarily beautiful, with a sharp and forthright temperament. No small number of young gentlemen in the capital had their eyes on her, hoping to marry her. But on the day the Pei family held the bouquet-tossing ceremony, she happened to toss the bouquet right into my arms. As a result, I've drawn no small amount of envy from nobles and heirs, all saying I'd lucked out. What they don't know, however, is that I, the so-called second young master of the Jiyu family, am nothing but a fake too. Everyone in the capital knows that Jiyu Heng, the eldest daughter of Marquis Jinghai's household, is gentle and virtuous, while Jiyu Ci, the second young master, is exceptionally handsome and dashing. The siblings are both just 18, and both inherited their mother's fine looks. As for why Jiyu Heng and Jiyu Ci look like the same person, ask my mother. She got into a quarrel with someone years ago and hallucinated it, and when the arch-rival just married off and had a beautiful daughter, she got angry and bragged that she had given birth to a dragon and phoenix twins. Even more ridiculous, the entire capital actually believed it. After all, my father is the Duke of Jinghai, my mother is the legitimate daughter of the National Protector General, and the Jiyu family in the capital is fairly influential. My mother said she gave birth to a dragon and phoenix twins, so who would dare say otherwise? Thus, starting from the age of 4, when I was old enough to go out and be seen, I began my life of split personas. Mornings were spent with the governess learning needlework, flower arranging, and tea whisking. Afternoons were spent with my master learning horseback riding, archery, and the 4 books and 5 classics in the morning, I was a delicate and pampered young lady, in the afternoon, a dashing and carefree second young master. Few people know that there was never any GUCI in this world, only me, forced to bind my chest, wear men's clothing, and lower my voice when speaking. I had lived this kind of life for 14 years, thinking I could just muddle through as before, but who knew the Pei family would suddenly intervene? Truth be told, it all started on the Shaanxi festival when my mother took me to appreciate flowers at the banquet. Dressed in my finest, I sat idly in the pavilion, tearing flower petals to feed the fish. When I heard someone behind me recite, "Clouds remind me of her robes, blossoms of her face," and I casually responded, "Spring breeze brushes the rail, pearled with dew, the pianist's grace." Turning around, I saw a young gentleman in a moon-white robe looking at me with a smile. His features were as delicate as a painting, his bearing noble and refined, and in his hand he held a freshly broken branch of crabapple blossoms. "Miss Gu," he raised an eyebrow slightly. I was surprised that he recognized me, but I kept my composure and gently gave him a traditional woman's greeting. "I'm not much to speak of. You must forgive me, young master." The young master made no comment. He smiled and handed me the crabapple blossom so I could continue tearing off its petals to feed the fish, said, "The flower and the face complement each other. Today I finally believe it," and then left. I didn't think much of it at the time. The flower viewing banquet was originally held for young noble ladies and gentlemen to subtly size each other up for marriage. With such good looks, it was only natural that some young gentleman would come over to strike up a conversation with me. It wasn't until the next day, when the Pei family sent a matchmaker to propose, saying that the eldest son of the Pei family had taken a liking to me and sworn to marry Jiyu Heng, the eldest daughter of the Jiyu family, that I realized the young gentleman I met at the banquet was actually Pei Xingzhou. My mother was overjoyed. She paced around the room 3 times holding the marriage certificate, her face flushed with excitement. "Henga, did you see that? The Pei family, the foremost noble family in the dynasty, has taken the initiative to propose. Your Aunt Ju's daughter once tried to ally with the Peis, and they wouldn't even give her the time of day. Now look, my daughter is marrying into the Pei family. Let's see how she dares to show off in front of me after this." Before I could say anything, something happened that afternoon. Disguised as the second young master GUCI, I went to the chess club as promised to play chess with my bunch of lousy chess friends. No sooner had I stepped onto the street than I heard a deafening clamor of gongs and drums and the crackling of firecrackers. Looking up, I saw red silk fluttering from the Pei family's embroidered tower in the distance. A beautiful young woman with an oval face, holding a silk ball in her arms, was beaming down at the vast crowd below. I hadn't had time to take a careful look. When the bouquet ball landed precisely in my arms, the whole street fell silent for a moment, then exploded into thunderous cheers. "Young Master Jiyu has received Miss Pei's embroidery ball. Truly a match made in heaven." I stood there holding the silk ball, completely stunned. Looking up, I saw second Miss Pei Xingyu on the embroidered tower giving me a sweet smile. Her expression was 3 parts sly and 7 parts smug, as if she had known all along that I would be walking down this street. I looked down at the men's clothes I was wearing, touched my flatly bound chest, and then pressed the small clay lump stuck at my Adam's apple. Flawless. No tell at all, but I myself am the biggest tell. I, Jiyu Heng, a woman, am simultaneously being sought in marriage by the eldest son of the Pei family and sought to marry the second daughter of the Pei family. What kind of tragicomedy is this? That evening, the study in the Jiyu residence was brightly lit. My father sat in the main seat, his expression grave as he looked at the 2 marriage credentials in his hand. My mother sat off to the side, her expression shifting from smug to flustered. "So," my father said slowly, "young Master Pei wants to marry my daughter, and the second young lady Pei wants to marry my son, yes?" I nodded, expressionless. "Both proposing on the same day?" "Yes." "Got engaged on the same day?" "Yes." "So when the weddings happen," my father looked up and gave me a world weary look, "will they be on the same day too?" Before the words had faded, the steward stumbled in. "Marquis, madam, the lady of the Pei family has sent someone to discuss the wedding date. Her meaning is," Since this match is a blessing from heaven, why not double the joy by holding both weddings on the same day, one for the groom and one for the bride, for twice the happiness? In the study, there was 3 seconds of silence. Truly, whatever you fear will come to pass. Getting married on the same day meant that on that day, I, Gu Hung, would be given away from the Gu family's main gate, while I, Guci, would welcome the bride in the Gu family's main hall. She is marrying Pei Xingzhou, and he is marrying Pei Xingyu. The same person must play both the bride and the groom. How is this supposed to work? Father wants me to call off the engagement, but mother is reluctant to give up the match with the Pei family. The Pei family is one of the most prestigious aristocratic clans of the current dynasty. The elder Lord Pei is a veteran minister who has served 3 emperors. Lord Pei is the Grand Chancellor, and the eldest son, Pei Xingzhou, earned the title of Tanhua at just 18 and now serves in the Hanlin Academy. The second daughter of the Pei family, Pei Xingyu, is said to be equally remarkable. At only 15, she excels in both poetry and verse, and countless young gentlemen in the capital dream of winning her hand in marriage. If these 2 matches were to succeed, she would be able to keep her archenemy beneath her heel for the rest of her life. A muddled mind conjures muddled schemes, and so she came up with this ridiculous plan. She wanted me to dress up as the eldest daughter and marry Pei Xingzhou in the morning, then sneak back in the afternoon, disguise myself as the second son, and take Pei Xingyu as my wife. That could be managed, but my mother seems to have forgotten that after the wedding comes the bridal chamber. I can't very well share the bridal chamber with the eldest young master Pei first, and then come back to share it with the second young lady Pei. Besides, even if I had the desire, I don't have the necessary equipment. My mother was silent for a long time, then finally asked me, unable to give up, which one do you think would be easier to deceive, the eldest young master Pei or the second young lady Pei? That's absolutely hilarious for someone like the Pei siblings, who are as extraordinary as dragons and phoenixes, to both take a liking to me is already a sign that the ancestors of the Gu family are smiling from above. Not only would I never be able to fool them, but even if I somehow managed to, if the Pei family ever found out that I dared to play 2 roles and toy with them, wouldn't I be done for? My father's title would most likely be in jeopardy too. So I packed my bags, put together Gu Heng's jewelry and Guci's banknotes, stuffed everything into the bundle, and fled overnight. Back then, I only thought that the world was vast and there would always be a place for me. Gu Heng. To settle, I never imagined that before I knew it, I would return in such a manner. Pei Xingyu lowered her tearful eyes, covered her face, and sobbed. Second young master Gu, thank you for your kindness, but you don't know, I am not merely drenched from head to toe. That scoundrel also took advantage of the chaos underwater to force himself on me and defile my virtue. Now, under the pretense of being my savior, he has come to seek my hand in marriage. Even if it means death, I will never marry him. I've already made up my mind. Rather than live on, bearing the scorn of others and bringing shame to the Pei family name, I would rather hang myself and be done with it. But even so, the fault was not hers. Pei Xingyu, I called her name earnestly. Listen to me, you've done nothing wrong. The one at fault is the person who assaulted you. You cannot just die so unjustly. Could the Pei family's honor ever be more important than your own life? I forcefully pulled her to her feet and pointed toward the door. If you die, you'll be free of trouble. But have you thought about your mother? What about your father and brothers? If you die, that scoundrel will roam free, completely above the law. Can you really swallow that? Pei Xingyu's eyelashes trembled back then, because I had caught her embroidered ball. Knowing I was a woman and couldn't give her what she deserved, I was utterly at a loss and even thought about having her call off the engagement. But no matter how I fooled around outside, indulging in food, drink, and pleasure, or roaming the streets on horseback, she simply didn't care. Instead, she invited me out and analyzed things with me sentence by sentence, saying that I was the husband she had chosen after great deliberation. I come from a good family, have a handsome appearance, the Gu family's reputation is untarnished, my parents are both kind and magnanimous, and my elder sister is betrothed to her brother. Before the wedding, she let me misbehave as I pleased. After the wedding, She could easily report me to the parents and elder siblings of both the Pei and Jiyu families and let them deal with me. I once inwardly sighed at how calculating she was at such a young age, daring to strategize for her own marriage. I never expected that her lively and frank temperament would end up in this kind of predicament today. Pei Xingyu fell silent for a long time, then wiped away his tears and spoke again. I can't swallow this indignity. I want that thief dead. Wanting the thief dead, that's easy to accomplish. Marry me, and I will help you. 3. The bandit who had saved Pei Xingyu was still outside the gate, shouting that since he had saved the second Miss Pei's life, if her reputation should suffer as a result, he was willing to marry her to restore the Pei family's honor. Master Pei and Madam Pei were pacing anxiously in the courtyard, while the eldest son, Pei Xingzhou, rode up in haste and ordered a servant to drag the bandit inside. But that scoundrel also brought a bunch of his rogue friends, taking advantage of their numbers and the fact that the Pei family dared not make a fuss. They refused to even enter the Pei residence. Instead, they stood outside and bragged loudly to the unsuspecting commoners, claiming to be the second young lady's savior. Trying to leverage this supposed favor, they shouted for the second young lady to come out and meet them, thinking that such blatant arrogance must mean he had some leverage. I gently tugged Pei Xingyu's hand and quietly asked, "Do you have any kind of secret or weakness in that scoundrel's hands?" Wiping away tears, Pei Xingyu said, "He tore off one of my jade eardrops." I quietly glanced at her ear and indeed saw a bloody scratch on it, likely left behind when the eardrop was yanked off. The jasper earpiece was unique in style and a gift from the reigning empress. Pei Xingyu was very fond of it and often wore it on her ear, even when I was the young lady, and rarely went out. I had seen it twice at banquets. What about the other one? Pei Xingyu took a neatly folded handkerchief from her sleeve and gently unfolded it. The other one is here. I had thought to leave it for my mother as a keepsake after I die. I took the earpiece and thought it over carefully, then suddenly leaned in to whisper a series of instructions in her ear. Pei Xingyu's fair face turned pale, then flushed, then pale again. After a long hesitation, she asked me, "Will this really work? How will you know without trying?" Hearing this, Pei Xingyu nodded. Taking advantage of having sent everyone to the front yard, she hurried to the back kitchen and placed the earrings as I had instructed. With everything ready, it was time to climb over the wall together and get out. I took Pei Xingyu's hand and led her back along the same path we had used to climb in through the back alley, then climbed out again outside the Pei family's main gate. Everyone was waiting to see the drama of the thief using his favor to seek reward. No one had noticed Pei Xingyu or me at all. I stuffed Pei Xingyu into the Jiyu family's carriage, clapped my hands, and coughed loudly a few times. Only then did the crowd turn to look at me. What's going on here? Why is everyone gathered in front of the Pei residence? I feigned ignorance, gently waving my folding fan and asking the gathered commoners with a smile. There happened to be someone who recognized me, and upon seeing me, exclaimed in surprise, "It's the second young master of the Jiyu family." Upon hearing this, the scoundrel quickly turned his head. I looked up and saw, wasn't this Zhu Die Lungzi, the one I had beaten before, who claimed to be a nephew of Consort Li's family? So it was he who had defiled Pei Xingyu's innocence. Consort Li's son, Zhao Yu, ranks second among the emperor's sons, exceptionally gifted in both civil and martial arts. He has been the top candidate for the crown prince since the late crown prince passed away from illness last year. The only shortcoming compared to the other princes is that Consort Li's family is undistinguished, leaving the second prince without a powerful maternal clan to support him. The emperor, now past the age of 50, is in declining health. In recent years, his imperial will has wavered among several princes. Previously, Consort Li requested the emperor to arrange a marriage for the second prince, intending to choose the second daughter of the Pei family as his consort. However, before the imperial edict could be issued, Prime Minister Pei politely declined. It's hard to say whether it was because of this that Consort Li bore a grudge. Knowing full well that Miss Pei had thrown the embroidered ball to me, she still cunningly set up this scheme, no doubt aiming to draw the Pei family to the second prince's side. No wonder the Pei family, despite their wealth and influence, could do nothing to deal with that brute Zhu Delingzi. How difficult it is for a young woman slandered in such a way, to prove her innocence. And all the more so when there is some truth to it. Zhu Delingzi looked me up and down a few times and said, "Guci, you've come just in time. Miss Pei fell into the water and I saved her. And I've also seen her unclothed. I hear she's been so ashamed and anguished at home that she's on the verge of death. Zhu Biao, will see this through to the end. I've come to ask for Miss Pei's hand in marriage. I'm afraid your engagement to her will have to be called off." "Oh, really? Looks like the beating last time didn't teach him a lesson." I put away my folding fan and tapped his forehead. "When did you save the second miss?" "As I recall, she's been staying at our residence with my sister these past few days." Zhu the dimwit was taken aback by my words, then burst into laughter, pointing at me. He said to the gang of idle friends behind him, "Listen to this, everyone. Young Master Gu here wants to stand up for his fiancée. What a pity, though, no matter how rich and powerful your Gu family is, you can't shut everyone up." The second miss fell into the water and was saved by me. Her clothes were soaking wet. I saw everything. What I should have seen and what I shouldn't. The boatman and the folks on the shore all saw it. The more he spoke, the more pleased with himself he became. He folded his arms across his chest and looked at me disdainfully. "Although I, Zhu Biao, am not from some noble family, I still understand the principle that men and women should not have physical contact. Now that I have seen the second miss, it is only right that I take full responsibility. If Master Gu is a sensible person, he should willingly break off the engagement and make way for my union with the second miss." I raised an eyebrow, unhurriedly unfolded my fan, and gently waved it. "You say you saved Miss Pei. Then let me ask you, when did this happen? Where did you save her? Do you have any proof?" "Yesterday afternoon, on Qingbo River east of the city," Zhu Biao answered quickly. Clearly having prepared his story in advance, the second miss accidentally fell into the water while boating alone, and I jumped in to rescue her. There were at least a dozen witnesses on the shore. If Master Gu doesn't believe me, feel free to go and ask them. I nodded, looked around at the gathered onlookers, and raised my voice. "Neighbors, since everyone is here today, Guci, will make things clear. Miss Pei has been staying at the Gu residence for the past several days, sharing meals and lodging with my elder sister. More than 30 members of the Gu household can testify to this. The day before yesterday in the afternoon, she was embroidering with my sister in the garden and never once stepped outside the front gate. So how could she have possibly fallen into Qingbo River east of the city? In my opinion, some mountain spirit or ghost must have taken on the form of Miss Pei, leading others to mistake it for her." A buzz of discussion immediately arose from the crowd. Zhu Biao's expression shifted slightly, but he quickly resumed his roguish demeanor. "I never thought young Master Gu would go so far as to fabricate a lie for the sake of his fiancée's reputation. Fortunately, I have something else that proves my life-saving grace that day." As he spoke, he took a small embroidered pouch from his waist, opened it unhurriedly, and revealed a turquoise jade earring inside. "Recognize this. This turquoise jade earring was bestowed by Her Majesty the Empress. The second Miss Pei treasures it as if it were her own and wears it every day. Take a look at the craftsmanship. Turquoise jade as the base, edged with gold threads, and a tiny character Pei carved at the pendant. Such an item is unique in the world. Only one pair exists. I hear the second miss is right inside this house. If you don't believe me, just call her out, and you'll see for yourselves." I paused, my gaze sweeping over Zhu Delingzi. I knew he would bring up the earring, but fortunately, Pei Xingyu and I had already prepared for this. "Speaking of the jade pendant in your hand, what a coincidence. Just yesterday, Xingyu told my elder sister that she had lost something extremely valuable from her room and had searched everywhere without success, whether it was misplaced by a servant or stolen. She didn't know, fearing that Xingyu would be upset. My sister gave her an additional pair of white jade earrings. If you don't believe me, I can have Miss Pei come out and show you." "Miss Pei, if you please." I lifted the carriage curtain and invited Pei Xingyu to step out. Pei Xingyu changed into a new set of clothes and head ornaments, and had neatly arranged her temple hair, with a pair of white jade earrings hanging gracefully and elegantly from her ears. How could she possibly look like someone who had been humiliated? Zhu Deleng's eyes went wide at the sight of Pei Xingyu, drooling like a mangy dog and trembling with excitement. He pointed at her and said, "It's her, she's the one I rescued, the second Miss Pei." Pei Xingyu's body swayed slightly. I quickly grasped her hand and shouted at Zhu Delengzi, "Didn't you say the second miss was inside the house? But here she is, arriving from my home. Who exactly is the person lying in that room? Lord Pei, Madam Pei. Why not send the maids to take a look at the second Miss's room, drag out that insolent creature, and show him to young Master Zhu?" Lady Pei twisted her handkerchief in her hands, already deeply troubled by Pei Xingyu's situation. The person at the gate, hoping to exploit their gratitude for favor, was clearly no good. Marrying Pei Xingyu off to him would be like leaping into a pit of fire. But if she did not marry, having been seen unclothed by a man, the girl would have no way out but death. To her surprise, I suddenly stepped forward at this critical moment, shocked and overjoyed. She did not stop to ask how I had come with Pei Xingyu. Seeing me signal her with a glance, she quickly understood and composed her expression, then called for the maid who attended to Pei Xingyu. "Foolish girl. The second young miss is clearly still at Jinghai with the eldest daughter of the Jiyu family. Why did you lie that she was rescued from the water and sent back? Hurry and drag that enchantress in the room out here, so we can see whether she is real or fake." When the maids saw Pei Xingyu descending from the carriage outside the gate, they were so startled that their faces turned pale. Leaning on one another, they stumbled and rushed to the backyard. Before long, they worked together to lead out a plump, white pig. Upon seeing the fat pig, the Pei family members inside the gate, the common people outside, and Zhu Delengzi were all dumbfounded. "What is going on? Why is the Pei family bringing out a pig?" I chuckled and stepped forward, grabbing the pig's ear to show everyone the swaying jade earring hanging from it. I knew there had to be some mountain spirit or demon causing trouble. "What's this on the pig's ear?" No wonder the young lady couldn't find her earring anywhere. It was stolen by a pig demon. "You, big stupid Zhu, saved a pig demon. They say when you do a good deed, you see it through to the end. This pig demon has been seen naked by you, so you'd better marry her and bring her home, lest you ruin the pig demon's reputation." The onlookers had never seen such a bizarre sight. Hearing this, they couldn't help bursting into laughter. Someone even pointed at the pig demon and said, "You've got to admit, this pig is all white and plump. If she became a demon, she'd surely be a great beauty." "Guci, what nonsense are you talking?" Zhu the big fool flushed bright red, with his good-for-nothing, booze-guzzling self. There was no way he could have imagined that the Pei family would dare to fob him off by swapping a pig demon for their daughter. Fuming and frantic, he then pulled a maroon bellyband from his collar and thrust it right in front of me. The two of us have been intimate. Miss Pei's bellyband is right here. What do you say to that?" Pei Xingyu turned deathly pale. Madam Pei was so startled that she dropped her handkerchief, and Lord Pei was so furious that he stomped his foot. I chuckled. What a coincidence, isn't it, to make it easier to disguise as both a man and a woman while fleeing. I happened to have a few bellybands tucked on me. Now, with a casual tug, I pulled out several. Who doesn't have something like this? When I went to pleasure houses, I stole quite a few from the ladies' chambers. How do you know the bellyband in your hand wasn't stolen from a brothel too, and that it must belong to Miss Pei? Besides, you rescued a pig spirit, not Miss Pei. Are you trying to frame someone with a pig spirit's bellyband? No one would be so idle as to embroider their own name on a bellyband. Even mine are usually stitched with just a few small flowers. Zhu Delengzi was silenced by my few words. Seeing that I was determined to marry Pei Xingyu, he realized he was about to lose. Gritting his teeth, he stubbornly insisted that Pei Xingyu had a past relationship with him, and that falling into the water was merely a deliberate act, her intention being to break off the engagement with me and marry him instead. There was another guy with a shrill voice chiming in, pointing at me and saying, "Aren't you the young son of the Jinghai Marquis? Now that Miss Pei has lost her innocence, you're still rushing to marry her. Do you want to be a cuckold and bring shame to your marquisate?" How amusing. A man's dignity isn't tied to his own belt, but to a young lady's skirt. Not to mention, I'm not those disgusting men for my daughter's family. Their reputation and chastity are nothing compared to a single human life. I gave that effeminate-looking bastard a disdainful once-over, then spat, "If you don't have a mirror, just piss on the ground and look at yourself. What's Zhu Deleng's background compared to mine? What's his looks compared to mine? It's not like second Miss Pei is blind. Why would she give up a handsome young man from a distinguished family like me for a toad-covered lump? In my view, Zhu Delengzi is just a rogue and a scoundrel. Seeing that the Pei family has high standing, he hooked up with some pig spirit and falsely accused Miss Pei just to worm his way into the Pei family's marriage alliance and steal my fiancé. Someone like that deserves to be beaten to death." After saying that, I rushed up and tore off Zhu Deleng's belt. While he bent down to pull up his pants, I drew back my fist and swung it straight into him while smashing. He didn't forget to call out to Pei Xingyu, "Second miss, what are you standing there for? He's slandering you, why don't you come over and hit him?" Her words jolted Pei Xingyu into action. Already harboring a deep hatred for him, the moment I called her, she clenched her little fists and charged over. After landing several hard punches to Zhu Deleng's face, she raised her foot and kicked him square in the groin. The pain made Zhu Delengzi lie on the ground howling repeatedly. Taking advantage of the chaos, I quickly stepped on his eggs, grinding them down hard a few times. Only after ensuring everything was crushed and ruined beyond future use did I let go. The servants of the Pei family, under the direction of Lord Pei and Pei Xingzhou, also rushed over to join the two of us in the beating. The ruffians who had followed Zhu Delengzi had never seen such a scene before and were already frozen in terror. Only the eunuch was still shouting desperately, "How dare you? Stop at once. This man saved the life of the second Miss Pei. How dare you strike him? Stop, I say stop. So much gibberish, you're asking for it." I went up and gave the eunuch several heavy slaps across the face, sending him spinning around a few times before he ran off sobbing. Only when Zhu the fool could no longer make a sound did the Pei family's house servants stop beating him, then lifted him by his arms and legs and threw him out onto the street. The onlooking commoners, who had earlier believed Zhu the fool's story and thought he had done a favor for the Pei family's second miss, had been hoping to see a good show where she would pledge herself to him. But now that I had muddied the waters, by contrast, since I come from a marquis's household and have a handsome appearance, far beyond what that fellow Zhu could ever match even on horseback, they had already grown quite suspicious of what Zhu the fool had said. Seeing that the Pei family was angered, and having been warned that anyone caught spreading rumors would face severe consequences, the crowd mumbled a few more remarks about the big white pig before quickly scattering. Madame Pei wept for joy, hugging Pei Xingyu tightly and sobbing uncontrollably. Lord Pei wiped away his sweat and gritted his teeth in rage. "That scoundrel Zhu has bullied our Pei family to this extent. At tomorrow's morning court session, I will certainly submit a severe impeachment." Pei Xingzhou, however, said nothing. He had the fat pig dragged to the gate, claiming that a pig spirit had caused trouble and could not be allowed to bring chaos to the mortal world. Then he removed the jade pendant, had the family cook slaughter the pig on the spot, and threw the meat out for the homeless. Lady Pei wept for a while, then, after a long time, took Pei Xingyu's hand and led her to me, placing my hand together with hers and said, "Master Ji, today you are truly Xingyu's savior. From now on, you shall be as dear to the Pei family as Xingzhou. Oh, and your future sister-in-law, once she marries into our family, I will surely treat her as my own daughter." If Lady Pei hadn't mentioned it, I would have nearly forgotten. There is still that arranged marriage between me and Pei Xingzhou now that I, disguised as Guci, have married his sister. I, Jiu Heng, can no longer marry him as his lawful wife. What a pity. Pei Xingzhou, with such character and such looks, is destined not to be mine. Madam, to be honest, my sister, her ambitions lie beyond the inner chambers. She has fled back to our hometown under cover of night. I'm afraid she cannot marry young Master Pei. I beg young Master Pei to seek another virtuous wife. What? Lord Pei, Lady Pei, Pei Xingyu, and Pei Xingzhou all turned to look at me in unison. Pei Xingzhou was the first to recover. He frowned at me with a skeptical gaze. "Your sister fled. When did this happen? Why have I never heard of it?" For he naturally would not have heard of something so groundless. I had no choice but to brace myself and reply, It happened just a few days ago. A family disgrace should not be aired outside, so I dared not speak of it. Please forgive me, young Master Pei. Lord Pei's face turned ashen, while Lady Pei was so anxious that she slapped her thigh repeatedly. What kind of nonsense is this? Everything was settled, the two families were to be joined by marriage, the embroidered ball was accepted, the birth dates were exchanged. How did it come to this? Minister Pei, Madam Pei. I clasped my fists and bowed, trying my best to appear an upright gentleman. This matter is indeed my Gu family's wrong against the Pei family first. If the Pei family no longer wishes to proceed with the marriage proposal, I, Guci, will have not a single word of complaint. Yet, as you both know, second Mrs. current situation, though that surname Zhu has been driven off, gossip and slander cut the deepest, and I, Guci, have been smitten with second Miss ever since I caught her embroidered ball that day. If I were to wash my hands of this now, her future days, I left the sentence unfinished, but the meaning was clear enough. Minister Pei was silent for a long time, then finally sighed and looked at Pei Xingzhou. Xingzhou, what do you think? Pei Xingzhou did not answer immediately. He glanced at me, then at Pei Xingyu, and suddenly asked a question that caught me off guard. Young Master Gu, you just said you fell for my sister at first sight. Were you being sincere? Naturally, I was sincere. I answered so quickly that even I was startled by my own response. Very well, Pei Xingzhou nodded. Since your sister is unwilling to marry me, the Pei family is not the kind to force others. This betrothal is hereby called off. As for you and my sister, he paused, his gaze heavy. As long as you truly treat her well, I, Pei Xingzhou, will acknowledge you as my brother-in-law. My heart relaxed, but was immediately followed by a feeling I couldn't quite name. Brother-in-law. He called me brother-in-law. How could he know that the person standing before him was supposed to be his fiancé? Seeing that her son had relented, Madam Pei couldn't bring herself to say more. She took my hand, laughing and crying at the same time. Good child, we owe today to you. From now on, you'll be our Pei family's son-in-law. Rest assured, I will treat you as my own. I nodded repeatedly in agreement, but my peripheral vision unconsciously drifted toward Pei Xingzhou. He stood under the corridor with his hands behind his back, his side profile cold and sharply defined. His brows were slightly furrowed as he gazed at my belongings scattered all over the ground, his thoughts unreadable. Having resolved a major trouble for Pei Xingyu, I hastily packed my bag and returned to the Marquis of Jinghai's residence. When I arrived home, my father was in the room berating my mother for having spoiled me. You're just sulking with others. What kind of ghost idea did you think of, letting your daughter grow up as a son to support you? And in the end, you've ruined her heart, saying she ran away from home and she ran away from home. Go look all over the world if you can find her, mother, knowing she's wrong. Usually if my father just glared at her, she would cry a few times, but now she's quiet and obedient, and keeps pacifying my father. Maybe she went out to play. She's not the first to stay out all night after all. Besides, you can't just blame me. If you don't want to raise her as a son, don't flaunt how powerful your son is all day long. Am I flaunting it? That's because you taught her martial arts. She's only relying on that little three-legged cat skill of hers to dare to run around everywhere. Stop shifting the blame and have a word with me. Dad slammed the table in anger, ready to start arguing with my mother. I sighed and pushed the door open before they could start arguing. All right, stop it. I'm back now, aren't I, you little brat? So you remember to come back. As soon as my father saw me dressed as a man, he automatically switched to father-son mode and raised a shoe to hit me. Grown quite bold. Have you? How dare you run away from home? My mother quickly stopped him, pulled me over, and shielded me, saying, the child is back now. So why are you still trying to hit her? Then she poked my forehead and asked, so, have you come to your senses and decided to get engaged to the Pei family? Yeah, I've figured it out. I put down my bundle and nodded. Father, mother, prepare the betrothal gifts tomorrow. 180 loads. I'm going to the Pei family to propose. 180 loads. Propose. My father and mother both looked confused. I picked up the teacup from the table, poured myself some water, and took a sip before continuing. Isn't that what you said, Mother? Since we can't have the weddings on the same day, we should at least keep one. So I kept one. I'm going to marry the second young lady of the Pei family. My father's hand, holding up the sole of his shoe, froze midair. His mouth opened and closed, then closed and opened again. You, who do you want to marry? My mother, quick to react, grabbed my sleeve, her voice trembling. Wait, have you lost your mind? You're a young lady, shouldn't you be going through with the engagement to young Master Pei? What do you mean by marrying? Second Miss Pei, I haven't lost my mind. I set down my teacup and said solemnly, Mother, weren't you the one who couldn't bear to let go of the Pei family's marriage proposal? Now that I'm going to marry second Miss Pei, you should be happy. How is that the same? My father finally found his voice. He no longer held up the shoe but slapped it on the table. You're a woman. How can a woman marry someone? I am currently a man. I spread my hands and looked down at my outfit. In everyone's eyes, Guci, the young master of the Jinghai Marquis mansion, is a real man without a doubt. Since a man can take a wife, why can't I? My father was left speechless by my retort. My mother, however, caught on and her eyes lit up. What you mean is, to keep up the act? Yes, I nodded. I've kept up the act for all these years anyway. I've already made it absolutely clear to the Pei family. Pei Xingyu's reputation is ruined. You know better than I do how much the world values a woman's name. If I don't marry her, she'll have no way out. As for what happens after, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. After, my father let out a cold laugh. How do you plan to keep up this lie in the future? Once you bring a wife home, how are you going to live with her? Do you really think you can hide it when you share the same bed? My heart faltered. But I refused to back down. I'll take it one step at a time. My father was so angry he started looking for the sole of his shoe again. My mother quickly stopped him, then turned to me and said, My daughter, marriage is no trifling matter. Even if you can trick the Pei family and deceive the whole world, can you deceive yourself? Do you truly intend to live as a man for your entire life? Live as a man for a lifetime? I thought for a moment, then smiled. That's not so bad. Being a man is so much freer. No need to listen to that nonsense about a woman's virtue is her ignorance. No need to be locked away in the inner courtyard doing embroidery. No need to be confined at home tending to a husband and raising children. Drink when I want, fight when I want, go wherever I please. Mother, don't you think the years I spent as your son were the happiest days of my life? My mother fell silent. My dad also fell silent. After a moment, we both let out a sigh. So it was decided. Early the next morning, the betrothal gifts from the Marquis of Jinghai's residence were carried out in a grand and mighty procession. 180 loads, including gold, silver, silks, jewels, and jade, stretched along an entire street. After discussion between our two families, the wedding date for Pei Xingyu and me was set sooner rather than later, just 1 month away. As the days passed, I was so busy that my feet barely touched the ground. I have to prepare for the wedding, handle all kinds of social engagements inside and outside the mansion, and constantly be careful not to reveal my identity as a girl. On the day of the wedding procession, my mother held a wedding handkerchief with tearful eyes. I wiped away her tears and teased her, saying it's not like she's marrying off a daughter. Why all the tears for a son getting married? My mother knows that it's good for me to stay at home as the young master of the Marquis's mansion, yet she still feels guilty about her impulsive decision back then. If only I hadn't casually said I gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl. Casually said. She never knew how grateful I was that she had told such a lie back then. On the auspicious day, I rode a tall, fine horse and went joyfully to the Pei household to marry Pei Xingyu. The wedding procession, grand and bustling, made its way through the most prosperous eastern market of Chang'an, with common folks by the roadside craning their necks for a glimpse of the excitement. For a marquis's mansion taking a bride, the pomp and grandeur was naturally considerable. I am dressed in a grand red wedding robe, with a jade pendant at my waist and a golden crown upon my head, presenting the very image of a charming and dashing young groom. In front of the Pei residence, the wedding matron helps the bride out. Pei Xingyu is adorned in a phoenix coronet and embroidered cape, her face hidden by the bridal veil. revealing only a pale, fair jawline as we bid farewell to the Pei family elders. Lady Pei takes my hand, her eyes reddening. You are an upright and kind-hearted young man. Xingyu is fortunate to marry you. Your mother-in-law wishes you a lifetime of love and a long, happy union together. I nod solemnly. Please rest assured, mother-in-law, I will never let her down. The bride was helped into the sedan chair. I mounted my horse and looked back at the large red lanterns hanging high above the gate of the Pei mansion. From then on, I truly could only play the role of the young master of the Jinghai Marquis's mansion. When it was time to return to the mansion and perform the wedding rites, I lowered my gaze and saw Pei Xingyu's slender fingers trembling slightly, so I reached out, took the red silk ribbon from her hand, and gently held her fingertips. Don't be afraid, there's no need to fear. A woman's world was never meant to be confined beneath her skirts. It is only the shallow-minded who try to bind our steps with slanderous words. First bow to heaven and earth, second bow to parents, third bow to each other as husband and wife. Lead the couple into the bridal chamber. The joyful cries of celebration echoed throughout the courtyard of Marquis Jinghai's residence. The boisterous crowd swarmed around us, escorting me and Pei Xingyu to the bridal chamber. To keep me from giving myself away, my parents had lured our relatives, friends, and my usual troublemaking crowd elsewhere with fine wine, delicious food, dice, and dominoes. Only when the bridal chamber was left with just me and Pei Xingyu did I finally breathe a sigh of relief. I picked up the Stilliard scale and gently lifted the red veil from Pei Xingyu's head. Pei Xingyu raised his eyes. The clear, cool depths of his gaze reflected the candlelight filling the room, like shattered stars scattered across an entire pond. She had put on makeup today, quite different from her usual plain and clean appearance. There was a touch more allure between her brows, yet she remained melancholy seeing me changing clothes. Her face paled. Mr. Gu, can I sleep on my own tonight? I smiled, set the Stilliard aside, took off my outer robe, and sat beside her in my undershirt. Don't be afraid, sleep however you wish, just think of Marquis Jinghai's residence as your own home. As I spoke, I took her hand and gently placed it over my chest, feeling the softness against his chest. Pei Xingyu's melancholic face suddenly turned horrified. Young Master Gu, I am not a young master, I said, taking off the scholar's cap from my head, tossing away the decorative flowers, and letting my long raven hair fall over my shoulders. Like you, I am also a girl, so you don't have to be afraid of what I might do to you. Pei Xingyu's hand froze against my chest, her entire body as immobile as if her pressure points had been sealed. Looking at her face, struck speechless with shock, I couldn't help but laugh. Holding her hand, I pressed it further against my chest. See, I didn't lie to you, did I? Genuine goods, the real deal. Pei Xingyu abruptly withdrew her hand, her ears burning so red they could drip blood. Her lips quivered for a long while before she finally forced out, Whoa, what about me? I carelessly flopped onto the bed and crossed my legs, looking at her. Is it really such a shock to find out I'm a woman? Pei Xingyu stared blankly at me, a swirl of complex emotions churning in her cool eyes. After a moment, she exclaimed in surprise, Young Master Gu, no. What should I even call you? Gu Heng. My real name is Gu Heng. Gu Heng. Isn't she the eldest daughter of the Gu family? Then, what about the second young Master Gu? You lied to me, from start to finish. The second young Master Gu never intended to marry me. Did he? Pei Xingyu's eyes turned red. That's not true. I turned over and sat up, quickly clarifying to her. My father is the Marquis of Jinghai. You should know that. Back when my mother was giving birth to me, my father was at sea fighting against the Japanese pirates. Everything was going fine. But then suddenly word spread that my father had been killed in battle. My mother was terrified, and just then, her archenemy from her maiden days came to visit. In a moment of impulsiveness, my mother announced to the outside world that she had given birth to a pair of fraternal twins. In this way, not only could he outdo his sworn rival, but he could also preserve the title of Marquis of Jinghai. So, you are both Gu Heng and Gu Ci. Yes, I nodded slightly, then took her hand and said, Don't be upset, I know this all sounds too bizarre to you, But as long as our house of Jinghai stands behind you, no outsider will dare speak ill of you. Since I am a woman, I won't hold back your youth. If someday you meet someone you truly love, you can still have our marriage annulled and remarry, if you don't mind. From now on you can treat this Marquis mansion as your own home. If you want to read, read. If you want to play, play. If you want to go out to see the mountains and rivers, then go out to see them. No one will stop you, and no one will dare to bully you. After my father passes away, when I inherit the title and become the Marquis of Jinghai, you will be a Marquis's wife. And the two of us will live a life of luxury for generations. Pei Xingyu stared blankly at me, and at last, tears fell from his cold, clear eyes, silent and quiet, one drop after another landing on the red silk of his wedding robe. I panicked and frantically wiped away her tears. Hey, don't cry. Did I say something wrong, or are you disappointed that I'm a woman? Neither, Pei Xingyu choked out, shaking his head. I just remembered that you said the eldest daughter of the Jiyu family ran away rather than marry my brother, but that wasn't true, was it? You called off the engagement with my brother because of me. I held you back. I was taken aback for a moment, then laughed and reached out to pull her into my arms, comforting her against my true feelings. Oh dear, I thought it was something serious. Your brother, he's certainly a good man, but I don't like him that way. I've been worrying about how to break off the engagement. Marrying you is actually a happy accident. Ah. Really, you don't like my eldest brother? I don't like him, not one bit. I shook my head vigorously, afraid that even the slightest hesitation would let Pei Xingyu see through me. But no sooner had the words been spoken than a clatter came from the doorway. I quickly opened the door and saw Pei Xingzhou standing outside, holding a wine flask, looking at Pei Xingyu and me with a complicated expression. Startled, I hurriedly asked him, "Brother-in-law, haven't you left yet after seeing the bride? Off. Why are you here now? What did you hear?" Pei Xingzhou picked up the fallen wine cup from the floor. His fair, jade-like face was faintly tinged with a ghastly pallor. "I came to speak frankly with my brother-in-law, to thank him for saving the Pei family and my sister from dire straits. I truly thought that what he did that day marked him as a kindred spirit of mine, but now I see I was flattering myself. It turns out not only does Miss Jiyu not like me, but you don't either. I'll take my leave right now." "What the hell do you know, brother-in-law?" "Hey, brother-in-law, don't get me wrong, what I meant by don't like isn't that kind of don't like, brother-in-law." I wanted to explain everything clearly to Pei Xingzhou, but the more I shouted, the faster he walked away. The lanterns under the corridor swayed in the night wind, their light flickering over his embroidered robes, and soon he disappeared behind the moon gate. "Isn't that settled then? You've only just gotten married and already you've offended your wife's brother." 6. I was overcome with anxiety. While Pei Xingyu's emotions were in turmoil all night long, the two of them looked at each other, neither sleeping well. The next day, when we returned to my family home, Pei Xingyu and I got up early to wash and dress. When she married into the family, she had brought along several dowry maidservants, so such trivial matters could have been handled by them, but perhaps worried that I might reveal my identity. Pei Xingyu sent all the maids and the nursemaid out, declaring that wherever I was, no one was to enter without her orders. She fixed her own hair bun and dressed herself, then adjusted my jade crown, saying, "Don't worry, sister, when we get to my home later, just enjoy yourself in front of my parents. If they say anything, I'll cover for you." In fact, she was overthinking it. Minister Pei and Madam Pei were so grateful to me, calling me worthy son-in-law repeatedly. Why would they say anything against me? Only Pei Xingyu kept his face sullen from start to finish, not even glancing my way. A grown man isn't broad-minded either. I just said I don't like him. Does it matter to be angry to this day? I gulped down a few sips of fine wine and bit into some delicious meat. The more Pei Hangzhou looked at me, the angrier he became. Finally, unable to bear it, he stood up and swept his sleeve as he left. This caused Lord Pei and Lady Pei to secretly doubt. They suspected that after I and Pei Xingyu got together, their feelings had become very good, and they remembered their own marriage misgivings and were upset. Her remark made me too embarrassed to even respond. Pei Xingyu also kept his head down, frantically eating, not daring to meet her parents' eyes even once. Fortunately, After lunch, Pei Xingyu and I headed straight home without letting anything slip. My father and mother were fully aware that I, a woman myself, had brought Pei Xingyu home as a wife even though I had saved her life. It still felt somewhat improper, so they treated Pei Xingyu like their own daughter, being exceptionally kind and considerate toward her. My mother even brought out the family heirlooms and handed them all to Pei Xingyu, telling her to keep them as her personal savings, which made Pei Xingyu terribly embarrassed. However, she is certainly a Debs-worthy head of the household. At such a young age, she can manage the household and finances. Not long after our shop was handed to her, she doubled the profits. My father and mother looked at her with both relief and envy, envious of how that girl could be so beautiful and yet so clever. I rolled my eyes in a horse stance, too lazy to bother with them. But since I've already said that Miss Gu slipped away at night, I can no longer wear women's clothes in public to fool others. That works fine, as I can dress in men's clothing and move among merchants and nobles, conducting business and gathering information. That day, I had just sat down in the tea house when the friend I was waiting for hadn't arrived yet. But Pei Xingzhou came first. He probably had an appointment with someone as well. Passing by my private room, he saw me, frowned slightly, and left without a word. He might still be angry with me. I don't argue with him. I just drink and eat meat while cooperating with the young master of the Pingyuan Earl's household. The young master of the Pingyuan Earl's household is quite a character. In the midst of wine and merriment, he slung an arm around my shoulder and said, "Let me tell you a secret. I've heard that Princess Lingyu has taken a liking to your wife's elder brother, but your wife's brother says he already has someone he loves and refuses to agree to become the princess's consort. Princess Lingyu has been asking around about your wife's brother's whereabouts. She even came to me. It seems she wants to cook the rice before it's even washed. Isn't Princess Lingyu the full sister of the third prince? The third prince is born to the noble consort, and compared to the noble consort's maternal home, the prime minister's residence, the family background is quite a bit higher. But alas, the third prince is a useless drunkard, with little outstanding performance in court or in political circles. His younger sister, however, is extraordinarily beautiful. Goodness gracious. This is another petty scheme from the ladies. They know the prime minister holds high rank and power, and they take every chance to lay their hands on his family's children to cause trouble. I recalled how Pei Xingzhou had just passed by a moment ago, and thought of the shopboy's furtive tea service, and immediately muttered a bad omen. He forced wine into the young master of the Pingyuan family, waiting for him to get drunk, so I quickly stood up to find Pei Xingzhou. I took 3 steps at a time and burst out of the private chamber, and at the end of the corridor I indeed saw a woman in a graceful posture, her dress fluttering, who then slipped into the innermost elegant room. I was about to chase over when a hand suddenly stretched out from the side and pulled me back. Hey, I stumbled 2 steps, nearly losing my footing. When I looked closely, it was Pei Xingzhou, big brother-in-law. Pei Xingzhou's cheeks were flushed. Seeing me, he went weak all over and collapsed onto me. The tea is off. Take me away quickly. I supported his body, trying to take him downstairs, but Princess Lingle had already noticed that Pei Xingzhou was missing and sent people out to search. Terrified, I pulled back my foot and glanced around. There was only a cabinet to hide in. Hurriedly, I dragged and pulled Pei Xingzhou inside and squeezed in after him. I don't know what had been put into Pei Xingzhou's tea, but it made his whole body burn with heat. He pressed against me and kept rubbing. "You're so cool and comfortable to touch. Hey, even though we're brother-in-law and sister's husband to outsiders, that doesn't mean we can be this close." I tried to push him away a little, but Pei Xingzhou has long arms and legs, and crammed inside the cabinet, there was no room to budge. On the contrary, my struggles ended up dislodging the jade crown that held my hair. My dark hair swept across his cheek and fell long onto my shoulder. Pei Xingzhou gazed at me with hazy eyes, and for a moment, unable to restrain himself, he reached out and touched my face. "Miss Gu, is that you? Have you come back?" "Come back to what? Wake up, brother-in-law, I'm Guci." I shook his arm, while blindly fumbling for the jade hairpin with one hand, but Pei Xingzhou stopped me halfway. He pitifully grabbed my hand and pressed it against himself, questioning me. I consider myself to have a clean record and an upright character. Why would you rather flee from our marriage than like me? Is it that I've done something wrong, and that younger brother of yours, he dislikes me just as you do? In all my years, I've never been so thoroughly rejected. 7. I was left speechless by his questions. Momentarily at a loss for how to answer, Pei Xingzhou, seeing that I remained silent, grew more aggrieved, like a child who got their candy snatched, burying his whole head into the nape of my neck, muffling, "Between you siblings, one ran away from an engagement, the other won't even look me in the eye. What exactly did I, Pei Xingzhou, do to deserve such dislike?" The heat of his exhaled breath rolled onto my neck, making me shiver all over. I originally wanted to push him away, but the cabinet was truly narrow. 2 grown people stuffed inside was already a squeeze, and with him in this state of fuzzy consciousness, pushing and pulling only made the situation more ambiguous. Even more deadly was the palm pressed against my body, scorching hot, carrying a burning heat that, even through the fabric, made my heart race. "Pei Xingzhou, pull yourself together," I hissed in his ear, giving his arm a hard pinch. Stung by the pain, Pei Xingzhou lifted his head slightly and stared straight at me. With bleary, red-rimmed eyes, looking as though he might burst into tears, I had never seen him like this. The usually dignified, stern, and reserved young Lord Pei now looked like a forsaken puppy, gazing at me pitifully as he mumbled, "You smell so good, like gardenias." As he spoke, he leaned in again to sniff, almost pressing against my neck. This time I was scared into a backward recoil, and my back of the head bumped against the cabinet wall with a dull thud. Footsteps and voices immediately came from outside. "Where is he? I clearly saw him coming this way. Search quickly. The princess has said that no matter what, we must bring the person back today." I held my breath, not daring to make a sound. Pei Xingzhou, on the other hand, was in the throes of the drug's effects, clinging to me like a piece of sticky toffee that just wouldn't come off. Probably finding me cool to the touch, he wrapped himself around me, arms and legs and all, while muttering delirious nonsense. "It's so hot. So hot. Hunger, help me, I'm burning to death." What should I do? Afraid he might actually die from the heat, I quickly stripped off his clothes. Even with Pei Xingzhou's chest fully exposed, he was still unsatisfied and kept complaining about the heat. "Hunger, help me, it's so hot here too." He tugged my hand downward, and as I pulled back, my hand happened to touch something hot and hard. What was that thing? I instinctively squeezed it a couple of times, which drew a couple of muffled grunts from Pei Xingzhou as he pressed even closer against me. I quickly covered his mouth with one hand and pressed his shoulder firmly with the other, terrified that he might make a noise. People outside searched around, and the footsteps gradually faded away. I had just breathed a sigh of relief when Pei Xingzhou suddenly stuck out his tongue and licked my palm. I recoiled as if burned, and my whole face reddened to the ears. "You," Pei Xingzhou, unaware of having done anything extraordinary, tilted his head with an innocent look, his eyes as clear as a pool of spring water, making it seem as if I were the one harboring ill intentions. I breathed in deeply, telling myself not to quarrel with someone who had taken the drug. Right now, the most important thing is to escape. But Pei Xingzhou won't let go of me. How am I supposed to get away? "What kind of poison did you actually get?" "An aphrodisiac. I've been given a secret imperial poison. There's no antidote, unless I release it." "Release it?" I touched the hot rod in my hand. "I'm no true young master. I've never had one of these since I was little. How am I supposed to know how to relieve it so it won't be so hot?" I don't know how to use it." I was panicked. I was at a loss, holding that rod with nowhere to run. Pei Xingzhou, on the other hand, seemed driven mad by the drug, just grabbing my hand and moving it up and down, but that didn't solve the urgent problem, and he grew a bit anxious. "Hot, so hot. Hunger, I'm dying. If I die, you won't have to run anymore." Why is he still worrying about so many things at a time like this? I remembered what the young son of the Marquis of Pingyuan said. Princess Lingyu wanted to make what was between her and Pei Xingzhou a fait accompli, to help her brother seize the throne. Making it a fait accompli, could it really mean what I was thinking about a man and woman consummating their union? Seeing that Pei Xingzhou had already begun to have a nosebleed, if they waited any longer, he might very well drop Dead on the spot, I slightly closed my eyes. After all, I was once engaged to Pei Xingzhou, and now I have married his sister, making the bond even closer. If I spent one night with him as his wife, I could not only neutralize the effects of the aphrodisiac poisoning him, but if I became pregnant later, the child would rightly be raised under mine and Pei Xingyu's names, and could even inherit the Marquis of Jinghai's title, a good deed that kills 3 birds with 1 stone. Come on, let me sacrifice myself for righteousness and once again find joy in helping others. 8. Don't be fooled by Pei Xingzhou's gentle and refined appearance. When he turns ruthless, he's hardly human. Even though I clearly said no, over and over, he still held me tight and thrust fiercely. He nearly survived being saved, but fucked me to death. Weak and trembling in the legs, I put on my clothes. While Pei Xingzhou was still unconscious from the antidote, I quickly tied up my hair, slipped away as fast as I could, and got one of the Pei family servants to put Pei Xingzhou in a carriage and send him back to the Pei residence. After all that commotion, I was so exhausted when I got home that even bathing felt like too much work. I lay down on the bed and slept straight through until noon. Upon waking up, I realized that Pei Xingzhou had actually come looking for me. This guy, surely he doesn't remember what happened yesterday. Does he? Speak of the devil. No sooner had I muttered this in my mind than Pei Xingyu arrived, bringing along her brother Pei Xingzhou. Guci, my elder brother says he has something urgent to discuss with you. Pei Xingzhou stopped in front of me. I made a hasty cupped fist salute and asked in a hoarse voice, eldest brother, what urgent matter brings you to me? After a night's rest, Pei Xingzhou had fully recovered from his earlier stupor, once again taking on the cool, aloof air of a refined noble son. Hearing this, he said to Pei Xingyu, I have a few important words for your husband. Please step aside. Sister, what is there that I, as your sister, cannot hear? Pei Xingyu seemed reluctant to leave. I covered my mouth with a dry cough, thought it was probably related to the poisoning from yesterday, and then urged him, my brother rarely comes to our residence. Xingyu, why don't you go instruct the kitchen to prepare a few of his favorite dishes? Let's have him stay for a meal before he leaves. Seeing that I had said this, Pei Xingyu had no choice but to head to the kitchen to arrange for lunch. As soon as she left, Pei Xingzhou's expression darkened. With his hands behind his back, he asked me, yesterday, my attendant told me that you were the one who said I was drunk and had him take me home. I nodded, yes. Pei Xingzhou then asked again, regarding the fact that I was drugged with an aphrodisiac, aside from you being present at the time, was there anyone else? I shook my head, no one else besides me. Then, has your elder sister returned to the residence? My elder sister? I frowned slightly, puzzled as to why he suddenly asked about that elder sister of mine, and said, she ran off long ago and hasn't come back since. Pei Xingzhou fell silent, his gaze fixed on me with an unflinching stare. After a long while, he took a hairpin from his sleeve and handed it to me, asking, did my brother-in-law drop this yesterday? The cabinet was too cramped yesterday, and I had hurriedly dropped the hairpin. I searched for it but couldn't find it, so I had no choice but to leave it be. To think he had picked it up instead. Overjoyed, I quickly took the hairpin and, lowering my head, tucked it into the crown of my hair while laughing and saying, I dropped it exactly when I saved you yesterday. Thank you, brother-in-law, for retrieving it for me. Pei Xingzhou said nothing, but gazed absently at the nape of my lowered neck. After a long moment, he reached out and gently stroked it. A shiver ran through me. I shrank back and laughed nervously. That tickles. What are you doing, brother-in-law? Nothing. Pei Xingzhou shook his head absently, then said after a pause, I just noticed there seems to be a mosquito bite on the back of your brother-in-law's neck. You really should take care to protect yourself. Oh my, who knew young Master Pei could be so thoughtful? I smiled and nodded, sure thing. Later I'll have the servants sprinkle some medicine to kill the mosquitoes in the mansion. Pei Xingzhou neither agreed nor disagreed. However, perhaps because Princess Lingyue's medicine was too strong, Pei Xingzhou seemed a bit distracted during the meal, watching me keep eating meatballs and vegetables while avoiding the fish entirely. He couldn't help asking, does my brother-in-law have any dietary restrictions? Is fish something you cannot eat? Not really, my mother said with a smile, shaking her head as she answered for me. She's a bit careless. dislikes the bones in the fish, finds picking them out troublesome. If she doesn't pick them, she bites herself, so she simply won't eat at all. Is that so? Pei Xingzhou smiled faintly, not asking more, but quietly picked a piece of fish into his bowl, carefully removing the bones, and then placed it in front of me. The fish meat in here has no bones left. You should taste more. It was strange and uncanny. Not only did I suddenly jump, Pei Xingyu also jumped, and timidly asked his brother, "Brother, why are you choosing fish bones for GUCI?" In such a normal, proper way, Pei Xingzhou cast a leisurely glance at her and said, "Second young master GU saved our lives. Is it not all right for me to help him pick out a fishbone?" Pei Xingzhou's words were so high-sounding that Pei Xingyu could hardly say anything more, but Pei Xingzhou's way of repaying the favor was not limited to this. After returning to the mansion, for some reason, he sent all sorts of rare and precious oddities to our Jinghai Marquis's mansion. Fresh vegetables and seasonal fruits were delivered without so much as a second thought. By the time everything was delivered, not only was Pei Xingyu stunned, but Lady Pei was also utterly astonished. She called Pei Xingyu back home and questioned her at length, asking whether she had been wronged at the Marquis of Jinghai's residence. Pei Xingzhou had all but moved the Pei family into the Marquis's mansion. Pei Xingyu was equally baffled. But one day, while I was eating sea bass sent by Pei Xingzhou and ended up vomiting all over the floor, she took my pulse and seemed to understand. 2 months pregnant. Who is the father of the child in your belly? What else could I say? He could only lower his head and admit, "It's your brother's." 9 What? Pei Xingyu slammed the table and roared. I never thought that Pei Xingzhou, with those honest looks of his, would do something like this. I knew it. How could my brother, that stingy man who wouldn't even spend his salary to buy me jewelry, suddenly go all out to compensate me after my marriage? So that's the truth. How did he discover that you're a woman? Did he force himself on you? Tell me, and I'll have my parents seek justice for you. Oh my dear young lady, seek what kind of justice? I'm too busy trying to cover it up. Sit down first and listen to me. I pulled Pei Xingyu close and told her everything about how Lei Princess had drugged Pei Xingzhou that day. Then I said, I volunteered to detoxify your brother. He didn't force me. Besides, look at us, we're both women. What does it matter who bears the child, now that I'm pregnant? Once the baby is born, we'll put it under your name and raise it as your own. When the child grows up and inherits the Marquis of Jinghai's estate, they can take care of both of us in our old age. Pei Xingyu was visibly tempted by what I said. Getting a child without having to go through pregnancy herself, who could resist that? Only, she still had some concerns. But right now, your young master a man getting pregnant and having a baby, that's just too absurd. And how do you know for sure the baby will be a boy? Hey, whether we have a boy or a girl is up to us, isn't it? When it comes to making things up, our family has a long tradition. My mother, in particular, has plenty of experience in deceiving others. The only challenge is that, as the second young master of the GU family, I need to get pregnant and give birth without anyone finding out. But even that isn't enough to stop me. My mother has a dowry estate south of the city, a 3-entry, 3-exit compound with tall walls around it. Inside, the flowers and trees are lush, and there's even a hot spring. Most importantly, the stewardess in charge of the estate is my mother's trusted confidant, and her lips are sealed tighter than a lock. Let's move there and just say we're going to improve your health. Then, after half a year or a year, once the baby is born, we can come back. And so, an utterly absurd plan was settled in a small room in the rear courtyard of Jinghai Marquis's residence. Decided by Pei Xingyu and me. Pei Xingyu pretended to be ill for 2 days. My parents were beside themselves with worry. The moment they heard I was taking her to the estate for quiet recuperation, they didn't ask a single extra question. They quickly had the servants pack our things and sent the 2 of us off. The carriage creaked out of the city. Pei Xingyu leaned against the carriage wall, lifted the curtain, and glanced at me. If my brother found out about this, do you think he'd be so mad that he'd tie you up and throw you into the sea to feed the fish? I was stuffing a sour plum into my mouth when I heard that, and shot her a look. If your brother found out, the first person he'd tie up would be you. An accomplice is even worse than the principal offender. Get it? Pei Xingyu shrank her neck and fell silent. As I had said, the walls of the manor south of the city were so high that not even a cat could climb over them. The head housekeeper, Nei Ju, was my mother's personal maidservant who came with her from her maiden family and watched me grow up. I had sent word ahead, so when she saw me, her eyes reddened, she took my hand, looked me up and down, and seemed to hesitate. I knew what she wanted to ask. Mistress Ju, I'll be staying here for a while. If I need any medicinal herbs or tonics, just go and procure them, and put it on the Marquis's household account. I paused and lowered my voice. Also, tidy up the east-facing room for me. I'll be using it, Nanny. Ju was a smart woman. She asked nothing and immediately turned around to make the arrangements. The first 2 months were fine. I have a strong constitution, and apart from craving sour foods and feeling drowsy, I had no other symptoms. Pei Xingyu lingered around me every day, asking first if I wanted to eat this, then if I wanted to drink that. He was so attentive it was almost ridiculous. Are you feeling guilty? I leaned back on the chaise lounge and rolled my eyes lazily. What do I have to feel guilty about? She retorted. Well then stop peeking at my belly all the time. Pei Xingyu's face flushed instantly. From the 3rd month, trouble began. My waist is gradually becoming impossible to hide, and even my formerly loose robes struggled to conceal it. Nanny Ju came up with an idea and had a few modified garments made for me, with folds running all the way from below the bust line. Anyone seeing them would simply take them for fashionable designs. I was just showing off my new clothes to Pei Xingyu when old steward Wu Bo came looking for me, saying that a young gentleman surnamed Pei wished to see me. A young gentleman surnamed Pei? Could it be that Pei Xingzhou has come to find us? Pei Xingyu and I were so frightened that we shuddered all over. Pei Xingyu bravely went out to fool her brother on my behalf, saying that if asked, I had brought her to the manor for health retreat, but Pei Xingzhou simply wouldn't buy any of Pei Xingyu's lies and insisted on seeing me, refusing to leave unless I came out. In the end, with no other choice, I had to hide my figure as best I could and go out to meet him. It had only been 3 months since we last met, but Pei Xingzhou looked like a completely different person, so gaunt that he seemed almost unrecognizable. When he saw me, a flicker stirred in his otherwise calm, untroubled eyes. It's been a while, brother-in-law. You seem to be doing very well. You've even gained some weight. I guiltily touched my face and laughed sheepishly. Well, once I got to the estate with no worries about food or drink, it's only natural that my heart is at ease and I've filled out a bit. Hearing this, Pei Xingzhou let out a miserable, soft laugh. It seems you truly don't like me. You'd rather hide out in this remote estate just to avoid me. Don't worry, if you don't want to see me, just say so, I won't disturb you. There's no need for you to abandon the comforts of the Marquis's manor and come all the way here to suffer. What is all this nonsense? When did I ever say I didn't like him or that I was avoiding him? Brother-in-law, I think there may be some misunderstanding between us. I truly just brought Xingyu out to recuperate. Next summer, when the weather warms up, the 2 of us will return to the Marquis's residence. Really? Upon hearing this, Pei Xingyu's dull eyes suddenly lit up. So you weren't trying to avoid me? Really? Truly? I nodded repeatedly, pointing to the wheat field outside the manor. Once the wheat is harvested, Xingyu and I will return to the Jinghai Marquis's mansion. Then, I hope you, my brother-in-law, will come and visit us. Alright then, since that's the case, I can see this manor is quite spacious. From now on, I'll come by every now and then to help you and Xingyu. Pei Xingzhou volunteered eagerly, even offering to stay for a few days. How can that be? Pei Xingyu and I were nearly scared out of our wits. We tried every coaxing and deceptive means to persuade him. There are many women in the estate but few men. It's truly improper for you, an unmarried outsider, to stay here. If you really mean well, go back and take care of my parents. Thus coaxed and persuaded, Pei Xingzhou reluctantly mounted his horse and left in the blink of an eye. I had been living at the estate for over 6 months. My belly had grown as big as if I were carrying a watermelon, and even turning over in bed was a struggle. Nanny Ju has prepared the midwife and all the necessary items for the childbirth, just waiting for me to go into labor. Pei Xingyu gripped my hand, even more nervous than if she were the one giving birth herself, both worried and excited. Seeing me sweat in pain, she cried as she spoke, otherwise, Let's call my brother back. Sister, I'm so scared. Why is childbirth so terrifying? What if something happens to you? What would I do then, if I'm not afraid? What are you afraid of? Even as I endured the pain, I comforted Pei Xingyu. Although I was the one who wanted to have this child, I never imagined it would be so agonizing. Before going through it, no wonder Mother and Aunt Ju said that giving birth is like passing through the gates of hell. This is truly a walk before the king of Yang. Thank goodness Xingyu isn't the one having the baby. I've trained for years and have a strong body, yet it's this painful. If it were your smaller frame, you'd surely suffer even more. Pei Xingyu was both crying and laughing at my words. Finally, evening arrived, and I gave birth to a daughter. Nanny Ju carried the baby over to show Xingyu and me. Look, what a wonderful child. The Jiyu family has an heir. I propped up my weakened body and reached out to touch the child's face. Pei Xingyu couldn't help but reach out and touch it as well. Bloodline is such a marvelous thing. This child is clearly mine and Pei Xingzhou's, but after just a few days, she has come to resemble Pei Xingyu strikingly, a niece taking after her aunt. It seems the saying is true. Pei Xingyu was overjoyed holding the child and came up with several names for me to choose from. Looking at the long list of names, I smiled and asked Pei Xingyu, "What kind of person do you want our child to become in the future? I think it would be best if she grows up healthy, lively, and free from worries. If that's not possible, then let her be the person she wants to be. Then let's name her Jiyu Can, signifying the luster of jade. May her future be bright and radiant." When summer arrived and the weather grew warm, Pei Xingyu and I, holding our child, returned to Jinghai Marquis's mansion as promised. Pei Xingzhou, having received the news, came early to the mansion and waited there with my parents. Standing before the mansion gate, Pei Xingzhou was dressed in a black brocade robe that accentuated his fair, jade-like complexion, yet his brows were knitted so tightly they could crush a fly. Spotting our carriage stopping in the distance, he strode over in long, swift steps. "Why so late? Weren't we supposed to set off at the hour of the dragon? Did something happen on the road?" He fired off questions in rapid succession. Holding Jiyu Can in my arms, I carefully stepped down from the carriage with Pei Xingyu. The sun in August was scorching, so I had specially covered the child with a layer of thin gauze to shield him from the light. Now a corner of the gauze was blown open by the wind, revealing a small, delicate face. Pei Xingzhou's footsteps suddenly halted. He looked at the little one in my arms, then at me and Pei Xingyu. "Whose child is this? Ours, Guci's and mine." Pei Xingyu guiltily raised his hand. His parents, following behind Pei Xingzhou, all widened their eyes upon hearing this. After listening, Pei Xingzhou's Adam's apple bobbed, and his face visibly darkened. "Guci," he called my name. His voice lowered as if squeezed through clenched teeth. "Didn't you tell me that you and Pei Xingyu were recovering from an illness at the manor? What illness, exactly, are you recovering from?" Pei Xingyu hid behind me, shrinking his neck like a little quail, wishing he could bury himself under the carriage. My mother and Madame Ju came out to greet us. Seeing the three of us standing stiffly at the door in such a strange atmosphere, they hesitated for a moment, unsure whether to come forward. Pei Xingzhou took a deep breath, then another, his knuckles cracking as he clenched his fists. "Speak, when was the child born?" Taken aback by his question, I forgot to lie and held up my fingers. 3 months ago. 3 months ago, plus the time of pregnancy, that would be. The air froze for a moment. Pei Xingzhou's face turned from ashen to crimson, then from crimson to pale, finally settling into a complex expression I couldn't quite name. With a loud crash, he fell backward, overcome with rage. My parents were so flustered that they forgot to ask where the child had come from and quickly summoned someone to carry Pei Xingzhou away. Holding the child, I exchanged a glance with Pei Xingyu. He sighed. "Well, that's the first time I've seen my brother this angry. Who hasn't, though fortunately, my parents are rather unconventional and have a high level of acceptance. At first, they were puzzled about how I could have a child, but after holding the baby and playing with her for a bit, the old couple accepted it without trouble. A child is a child no matter what. Can't we just give her the surname Gu?" my mother said, comforting my father. My father reassured himself as well. Back in the days of the coastal battles, So many soldiers and civilians died, leaving behind countless widows and orphans. I always hoped they'd find peace in the rest of their lives. Now that this child has come to our family, it seems her fate isn't meant to end. Let's just raise her well. Wait a minute, are they treating my child like an orphan? Father, mother, this child is my own flesh and blood, I whispered, leaning close to their ears. Both my parents were startled. Your own flesh and blood? With whom? Surely Miss Pei couldn't have had a child with you. It was a long story, and with Pei Xingzhou still lying in the mansion, I dared not say more. I simply told them to take the child and play with him for now. I stayed by Pei Xingzhou's side for a good while before he slowly came to. As soon as he woke up, he grabbed my hand and wouldn't let go, hoarsely saying, "You, Xingyu, the two of you have kept me in the dark so cruelly." Having said that, he ignored my attempts to stop him and struggled to get up to find the child. Where is the child? Bring him here, so I can see him. In the end, since he had done his part when I gave birth, I went and brought the child over. Pei Xingzhou lowered his head, and his gaze finally fell upon the tiny little figure. Ji Yukan had been woken up by all the commotion and was now looking around with a pair of dark, glistening eyes. Between those brows and eyes, there was unmistakably 70 to 80% of Pei Xingyu's bearing, yet faintly and indistinctly, he also resembled Pei Xingzhou himself. Bloodline. It really does pick on the weak and yield to the strong. The child, when born, resembled Pei Xingyu. After a little more than a month, she slowly grew into a shadow of Pei Xingzhou, especially those eyes, dark and bright, looking at people with a stubborn grip, exactly like her father. Pei Xingzhou looked at those eyes, and the whole person seemed to be frozen in place. "You lied to me," he whispered. "You lied to me and said you would return to Zhuangzi to recuperate. You lied to me and said I should go back to take care of my father-in-law and mother-in-law. You drove me away. How dare you? Isn't it a case of skill giving one the nerve?" I touched the tip of my nose. Pei Xingyu finally leaned out from behind me and whispered, "Bro, stop nagging. You've scared Can-Can." Can-Can? Pei Xingzhou was taken aback. "Ji Yukan." I held the child out toward him. "Her name is Ji Yukan." Pei Xingzhou's lips trembled, and he pressed his face gently to his daughter's forehead, whispering her name. "Sanzan, Ji Yukan, it's a beautiful name." He held on to the child and refused to let go. Even I couldn't touch the child's swaddling, let alone Pei Xingyu. Pei Xingyu grew impatient, pushing his brother's shoulder. "Why haven't you gone back to the Pei family yet? Where is there an elder cousin-in-law who lounges in his sister's and brother-in-law's room all day, holding someone else's child and not letting go? If you want a child, go back home and marry a wife and have one yourself." Pei Xingzhou gave her a meaningful glance. "Why is it that I can't find a wife or have children? Don't you know?" Pei Xingyu thought of her sister-in-law, who according to rumor had run away, and her arrogant demeanor immediately deflated, taking advantage of mine and Pei Xingyu's guilt toward him. Pei Xingzhou then openly came to stay at the Jiyu family home. One moment he'd say the child was too young and needed more people to look after it. He said his parents were worried that his sister-in-law might feel down after giving birth, so they wanted her own family to come over and keep her company. But as they stayed, the books from his study, the brushes on the shelves, and the flowers in the yard all got moved to the Jinghai Marquis's mansion. At first, my parents thought he was just being a good brother-in-law and politely tried to persuade him to stay, but once they saw he was clearly settling in for the long haul, they started to panic. They pulled me aside and asked, "Do you think that eldest son of the Pei family is still carrying a torch for Ji Yuheng? You're already married to Xingyu. Where are we supposed to find him another wife? He's not planning to latch onto our family, is he?" "He's definitely latching on, but not necessarily onto me, Ji Yuheng. He's clearly latching onto his daughter more. Just look at how he rushes home to hold his daughter the moment court is over, as if he's afraid Xingyu and I might mistreat the child." At first, he pretended to sleep in the guest room, then somehow, he moved to the western courtyard. Later, the threshold of that western courtyard was worn down 3 inches by his footsteps, because every day before dawn, he'd be pacing the yard with his daughter in his arms, saying that if the child was fussy and wouldn't sleep, she needed to be walked. Can-Can's wet nurse secretly complained to me, "Sir, your brother-in-law is more attentive than I am." A nursemaid, The moment the baby cries at night, before I can even get up, he's already rushed over from the western courtyard without even putting on his shoes. I glanced at Pei Xingyu. Pei Xingyu was gnawing on an apple. At that, he rolled his eyes. He's just bored. Isn't fighting over the succession in the court enough to keep him busy? Why must he come and snatch the baby from us? That's what he said. But every time Pei Xingyu saw his sister's brother holding Can, he'd sidle over and squeeze onto the couch to play with the little one. Can was squeezed between the brother and sister, her small hands flailing about wildly, grabbing her uncle's hair and then tugging at her aunt's earrings. Pei Xingyu winced in pain but couldn't bear to let her go. My father couldn't bring himself to kick them out, so he could only drop subtle hints. That day, Pei Xingzhou returned from the court and, as usual, headed straight to the western cross-courtyard. My father sat upright in the hall, cleared his throat, and said, "Xingzhou, you're rushing about every day. Is anyone looking after the Pei family estate?" Pei Xingzhou did not stop walking, only cupping his hands and saying, "Father-in-law Ji, no need to worry. Everything is well at home." With that, he turned directly into the inner chamber to see Can. My father, having been gently rebuffed, turned to look at my mother. My mother, a straightforward person, slammed her hand on the table and said, "I'll go speak with him." Half an hour later, my mother returned with a complicated expression on her face. "What did he say?" my father asked. My mother sat down, took a sip of tea, and said pensively, "He said the Pei family home feels empty. Apart from his parents, living there alone is too quiet and cold, not as lively as our place." My father fell silent. My mother also fell silent in the end. My father waved his hand and said, "Forget it, let him stay if he wishes. After all, the western cross-courtyard is empty anyway." And so, Pei Xingzhou settled down at the Jiyu family home. As the days went by, Can celebrated her full month, 100-day, and half-year milestones, with Pei Xingzhou orchestrating every single occasion without exception. On the day of the 100-day celebration, he actually hired an opera troupe from outside, giving the Jiyu family quite a fright. My father tugged at his sleeve and said, "Xingzhou, it's just a child's 100-day party. There's no need to be so extravagant." Pei Xingzhou replied earnestly, "How can that be? Can will only have 100-day celebration in her life, so of course it should be held in grand style." He paused, then added, "Besides, it didn't cost much." My father wanted to persuade him further, but Pei Xingyu stepped in. "My brother has saved up quite a fortune over the years, and since he has no wife to spend it on, who else but Can, father-in-law, just let him spend." I watched Pei Xingzhou in the courtyard holding Can up to the sun. The light fell on his shoulders. He hadn't even changed out of his official robes, and his court hat was still askew. Can, held high above him, giggled non-stop and drooled all over his face. Oblivious to it, he made funny faces at his daughter. Pei Xingyu leaned on my shoulder and said softly, "Actually, my brother wasn't like this before. He used to hate kids when he was little, said they were too noisy and annoying. I never thought he'd love Can this much." Yeah, I never did either. As autumn gave way to winter, Can was about to turn 1 year old that day. I was teaching Can to recognize people, pointing at Pei Xingyu and saying, "This is Mema," and pointing at Pei Xingzhou and saying, "This is Uncle." Can tilted her head and looked for a long while, then suddenly reached out her little hand and patted Pei Xingzhou's face, letting out a vague sound, "Da." The whole room fell silent. Pei Xingzhou stood frozen, his eyelashes trembling. My father and mother, looking at Jiyu Can's appearance, so strikingly similar to that of Pei Xingzhou and Pei Xingyu, seemed to vaguely understand something. But before they could question me, the imperial transfer order arrived. The pirates had begun raiding the coastal people again, and the defending generals had been scattered and defeated. His Majesty wanted my father, a veteran general, to take up arms against the Japanese pirates. My father was no longer as robust as he had been 10 years ago. Years of warfare had worn down his body. This time, if he went, it would likely be a perilous journey with little hope of return. After thinking all night, I knocked on the door of Pei Xingzhou's quarters in the western courtyard. "I'm going to help my father fight the pirates. I'm a little uneasy about the people at home, and the only person I can entrust is him." Pei Xingzhou's eyes reddened as he looked at me by the lamp. I unbuttoned my clothes and revealed the body of a daughter of a noble family. As you suspected, I am Gu Heng, also Guci. Earlier you pretended to be deaf and mute, pretending you didn't know. I pretended to be stupid and slow-witted as well, as if you hadn't seen through my true form. But now I must leave. It's unknown how long I'll be gone. Before I depart, I want to tell you everything. I don't want you to have any regrets, and I don't want myself to have any regrets either if I'm wrong in any way. I hope you will take good care of my mother and Xingyu, and take good care of our daughter Jiyu Kan. Pei Xingzhou gripped my sleeve tightly, refusing to let go. I gently kissed his cheek and said, in this life, everyone must make choices. Xingyu chose to live on bravely, and I chose to follow the path I want. Pei Xingzhou, you must make your choice too. As a high-ranking court official, witnessing chaos in the realm, it is his duty to restore order. But was it right for him and Lord Pei, clinging to the reputation of being uncorrupted officials and loyal to the emperor, to insist on remaining purely courtiers, refusing to form alliances or take sides even at the cost of their lives? A righteous man indeed avoids factionalism and maintains his integrity, for the way of a loyal minister is the foundation of one's conduct. Yet the truths of this world have never been singular. The way of a loyal minister is correct, and I do not oppose it, but that is the truth for times of peace and prosperity. In these times, sticking to those old rules is nothing but stubbornness. His Majesty has 3 sons. The second prince excels in both civil and martial arts but is arrogant and conceited. The third prince is incompetent yet domineering. I've heard that the 4th prince comes from a humble background and lost his mother early, but he is intelligent, open-minded, magnanimous, and righteous. If we support him to ascend the throne, with no interference from powerful consort families on the outside and wise ministers assisting on the inside, the court and the realm will surely enjoy peace and stability. The realm needs not only a wise ruler, but also a benevolent one. Pei Xingzhou, you also want our daughter to grow up in a time of peace and prosperity, don't you? Make your choice, and wait for my return. 11 On the 3rd day after Jiyu Heng left, Pei Xingzhou stood atop the city tower, gazing in the direction she had gone, until the setting sun stretched his shadow long and long. That night, for the first time, he drank half a jug of wine. Through drunken, hazy eyes, he caught sight of the lamp on the table. Its flame flickered, leaping again and again, so much like the way candlelight had played across her collarbone the night she undid her robes. He set the wine cup down with a heavy clink, rose, and went to the study. There he pulled out a dusty roll of military maps and spread it open. It was densely marked with troop placements and supply routes for every prefecture and commandery. He watched for the entire night. The next morning, Pei Xingzhou knocked on the gate of the Pei residence. The doorkeeper said the master had not yet risen. He walked straight past the screen wall, through 2 corridors, and waited in the main hall for the time it takes an incense stick to burn. Finally, Master Pei emerged, leaning on an old servant's arm. He paused slightly upon seeing Xingzhou sitting in the armchair with dark circles under his eyes. Xingzhou, so early in the morning? Pei Xingzhou stood up and bowed deeply, his hands touching the ground. Father, I have made up my mind. Lord Pei's hand, which had been stroking his beard, paused. The way of the loyal and detached minister is meant for times of peace and prosperity, Pei Xingzhou said as he straightened up, his gaze as clear and cold as frost. But now, coastal pirates invade year after year, the court is torn by factional strife, and 7 out of every 10 portions of Jiangnan's tax revenue go to funding the army, leaving the common people in deep suffering. His Majesty is unwell. The heir apparent's position remains vacant, and the princes all harbor their own ambitions. How can this be called an age of peace and prosperity? He paused, his voice deepening. If we still cling to that rule about gentlemen not forming factions, when the empire truly falls into chaos, will our Pei family really be able to stay above it all? Lord Pei was silent for a long time, so long that the birds under the eaves sang out twice. At last, this veteran minister who had served 2 reigns let out a long sigh, his voice carrying a sense of relief. You've finally come around to it. Pei Xingzhou was stunned. Do you think I can't see the situation clearly, Minister Pei? slowly walked up to him, reached out, and patted him on the shoulder. I'm old, and I've lived my whole life guarding a spotless reputation. It's not that I don't know how to adapt, it's that I fear one wrong move on my part would bring disaster to my entire family. But you're different, Xingzhou, you have more resolve than I do. And you see farther than I. His palm was dry and warm, much like the warmth Pei Xingzhou remembered from childhood when Minister Pei used to shield him behind his back. After he'd gotten into trouble, go, do what you need to do. Pei Xingzhou's throat tightened, he bowed again, this time even deeper, almost touching the ground. He chose the fourth prince. This decision set off an uproar in the court. No one had expected that Pei Xingzhou, famed for never forming factions, never taking sides, and speaking only on practical matters rather than power struggles during court sessions, would suddenly align himself with the most inconspicuous fourth prince, the second. Prince's advisor sneered over drinks. Pei Xingzhou has lost his mind. The fourth prince's birth mother was a laundry maid from the Imperial Wardrobe Bureau, with no meaningful family connections behind her. What kind of future can he expect by siding with him? The third prince's camp, meanwhile, cursed him behind his backs for chasing empty fame, claiming that Pei Xingzhou, not daring to offend the powerful second prince, simply picked the softest target instead. Only the fourth prince himself knew that when Pei Xingzhou came to him that day, what he brought was not a pledge of allegiance, but an entire chest of case files. Inside were the accounts of the second prince's privately raised militia, solid evidence of the third prince's embezzlement of military funds, a mapped web of the factions within the 6 ministries of the court, and a detailed strategy for coastal defense in Jiangnan. On the title page of that strategy was a name he had never heard before, Guci. Who is this? The fourth prince looked up, his young face marked with cautious curiosity. Pei Xingzhou gently stroked those 2 characters with his finger, as if touching someone very, very far away, a person who is very important to me. The fourth prince did not ask further. He is a smart man. Smart people know when to ask and when not to ask. He only said one sentence, Master Pei, if one day I ascend to the throne as emperor, I will not fail today's trust. Pei Xingzhou smiled faintly, and that smile carried a trace of indescribable bitterness. I do not ask your highness to spare me, only to spare the people of the world. The fourth prince paused, then stood up, adjusted his clothes and robes, and bowed deeply to him. Pei Xingzhou quickly leaned aside, but the fourth prince insisted on cupping his hands in a bow. Sir, dare to stake your life and your family on me, if I can't even show this bit of courtesy? What, benevolent ruler, are we talking about? Since that day, Pei Xingzhou's days had been treading on a taut string. During the day he went about his duties at court as usual, not smiling easily and leaving no gaps in his work. At night he had to shuttle between the secret residence of the fourth prince and a group of aides to discuss strategies. Sometimes the discussions lasted until the wee hours, and after returning home he still had to review documents. Getting up again before dawn, his eye sockets grew increasingly dark, and he looked thinner by a full circle, his clothes hanging loosely on his body. The fourth Ji Yuheng's mother, Xu Shi, watched all this with a heart full of worry and sighed. She had no idea what had happened between Pei Xingzhou and her daughter. She only knew that this young man took meticulous care of her and the children. In the 2nd month after Ji Yuheng left, Pei Xingzhou brought Xu Shi, Pei Xingyu, and Ji Yukan to the rear residence of the Pei mansion. He assigned the most reliable maids and matrons to attend to them, ensuring they had everything they needed in terms of food, clothing, and daily necessities. Xingyu's health improved day by day. She was also busy herself, busy managing the household, busy running the shops, and busy sending all the money she earned, clothes she made, and medicinal herbs and provisions she procured to the battlefield. Little Ji Yukan could already stand up by holding on to the wall and take a few steps on the ground, babbling and trying to learn how to speak. A pair of jet-black, glistening eyes looked just like her mother's. Whenever Pei Xingzhou came from the front courtyard to see her, she would stretch out her chubby little hands and ask him to hold her. When Pei Xingzhou held his daughter, the cold, harsh expression on his face would suddenly melt away like spring ice meeting warmth, becoming so soft it was almost unbelievable. One time, Ji Yukan tugged at his collar and refused to let go, sweetly calling out in her baby voice, "Daddy, I want one more daddy." Pei Xingzhou stood frozen, his eyes reddening. In an instant he buried his face in the tiny hollow of his daughter's shoulder. His shoulders trembled slightly, but he made no sound. She stood at the doorway, watching this scene, and quietly wiped the corners of her eyes. She had actually long since guessed it. The way Pei Xingzhou looked at Ji Yu Heng, that unmistakable expression in his eyes, how could a mother not notice it at all? She just didn't say anything. She kept quiet because she knew her daughter's path was too difficult, and there was nothing she could do to help. The only thing she could do was not add to the burden. But now, watching Pei Xingzhou hold his granddaughter, she couldn't help cursing inwardly. "Ji Yu Heng, you wretched girl, when exactly are you coming back?" Ji Yu Heng was at sea at that moment, to be precise. She was crouched on the deck of a Fujian trading ship, using a dagger to whittle an arrow shaft. The sea wind blew in her face, thick with briny moisture and the smell of fish, tousling her hair into a mess. Her face was caked with a layer of salt frost and gunpowder residue, making her look as if she had been pulled straight from a stove. The deputy general beside her, Zhao Daong, grinned and teased her. "Young Master Ji Yu, if your face gets any darker, even your mother might not recognize you when you return to the capital." Ji Yu Heng didn't look up and kept working with her hands. "Brother Zhao, you still have the heart to joke. Did you see yesterday's battle report? The left battalion lost another 37 brothers." Zhao Daong's smile froze. The war was far more grueling than anticipated. Although General Ji Yu Heng's father, was highly experienced, he was advanced in years and his health was no longer what it used to be. In the very first battle, he personally took up his sword and drove back over 300 Japanese pirates, though he himself was grazed on the shoulder by a stray arrow. By the time Ji Yu Heng reached the military camp, her father, Marquis Ji Yu, was bare-chested, letting the military doctor dress his wound. The injury on his shoulder was not severe, but an old scar ran from his collarbone all the way down to his lower back, lying across his back like a centipede, a harrowing sight. Ji Yu Heng glanced at it, then turned her face away, her voice subdued. "Father." Marquis Ji Yu looked back and saw her, paused in surprise, then put on a stern face and said, "Who told you to come? Go back. The deployment order says GUCI." Ji Yu Heng said without changing her expression, "So here I am." The Marquis Ji Yu was so furious that his beard and eyes bristled. If the military doctor hadn't held him down, he would have sprung straight off the couch. But Ji Yu Heng had come, and that was that. Military orders were as solid as a mountain, and the deployment order clearly bore the name GUCI in black and white. There was no sending her back. Besides, after months of fighting, Ji Yu Heng's skills were plain to see. Though she had never formally set foot on a battlefield, years of learning from her father had steeped her in military strategy and tactics. Her archery was second to none. She could hit the square hole of a copper coin from 300 paces away. Once, during a night raid on a Japanese pirate camp, she led 30 elite soldiers in, silently wiped out the enemy's grain depot, and set their camp on fire to boot. The head of the Japanese pirates was choked awake by the smoke, ran out barefoot, and was met with an arrow that struck him right in the throat. After that battle, Ji Yu Heng's standing in the army was firmly established. The soldiers called her Little General Ji Yu in private, their tone full of admiration. But prestige cannot be eaten, nor can it serve as troops. The number of Woku raiders was nearly double what the imperial court had anticipated, and they were well equipped with fire lances, Japanese swords, and arquebuses, clearly with the Portuguese backing them. The more Ji Yu Heng fought, the more she felt something was off. These were no roving pirates, they were clearly a disciplined, well-trained army. She documented her concerns in a classified report and sent it by urgent courier to the capital, addressed to Pei Xingzhou. When Pei Xingzhou received the letter, he was discussing matters with the fourth prince at his villa. He tore open the envelope and saw the familiar handwriting. Ji Yu Heng's writing had never been neat, strokes neither level nor straight, but each one was made with great force. As if trying to pierce through the paper, he suddenly froze, as if nailed to the spot. The fourth prince noticed his unusual reaction and asked with concern, "Sir, what's wrong?" Pei Xingzhou folded the letter, tucked it into his bosom, and took a deep breath. "Your Highness, The situation in Jiangnan is more serious than we thought. The Japanese pirates have foreign backing. General Yu cannot hold out much longer. The court must send reinforcements." The fourth prince frowned, but the Ministry of War's deployment order requires the second prince's approval, and he'd love nothing more than to see General Yu defeated, so he can use it to impeach my uncle, who is overseeing grain transport in Jiangnan. Pei Xingzhou was silent for a moment, then suddenly said something that shocked the fourth prince. "Then don't go through the Ministry of War." "What do you mean? I have some old acquaintances in Jiangnan, including a few military commanders. If we could secretly move troops in the name of coming to the king's aid, bypassing the Ministry of War and heading straight to Jiangnan." The fourth prince suddenly stood up. "Pei Xingzhou, are you trying to start a rebellion? Your servant is trying to save this realm." Pei Xingzhou's voice was like a blade, its edge fully exposed. "Your Highness, the second prince will not let General Yu win. He wants the Wokou chaos to grow as large as possible. The larger it gets, the more grounds he has to impeach the officials south of the Yangtze and install his own men. By then, the southeast will be in ruins, and the court will have to pour even more silver into filling that hole. Where will that silver come from? It will be scraped from the common people." He walked over to the map and pointed at several islands where the Wokou had holed up. "Your servant has found that the second prince's retainers have business dealings with these Wokou. They sell ironware and gunpowder to the Wokou, and the stolen goods and wealth the Wokou plunder are laundered through their trading firms, profiting from both sides, making money on both ends. What a fine business, with no capital and boundless gains." The fourth prince's face turned pale. "Do you have evidence?" "Most of it, but a few key pieces are still missing." Pei Xingzhou turned around and looked at him with a heavy gaze. "That's why I said, General Yu cannot afford to lose. If she is defeated, Jiangnan will fall completely into the second prince's control. Then the evidence, the truth, all of it will be burned to ashes." The room was so quiet that the crackle of the candlewick could be heard. The fourth prince closed his eyes. When he opened them again, there was something weighty in those young eyes, something like resolve, or like a gambler going all in, staking his last chips on a final throw. "All right, go ahead. Whatever you need, just ask." Pei Xingzhou bowed with his hands clasped, then turned and strode out of the side courtyard. The night wind poured into his collar, chilly. Subconsciously, he pressed the letter in his chest even closer. It felt slightly warm against his heart. He recalled what she had said that night when she undressed. "Pei Xingzhou, you too must make a choice." He had made his choice, chosen a path from which there was no turning back, and now, all he had to do was make sure that she still had a path forward. Over in Jiangnan, Ji Yuheng's situation was indeed growing more and more difficult. Her father had been struck by a poisoned arrow during a naval battle. Though he narrowly survived, he was now as frail as a sheet of paper, lying on his bed and needing help just to turn over. All the burdens of the military fell onto Ji Yuheng's shoulders. By day, she had to inspect the camps, conduct drills, and arrange defenses. By night, she had to study sea charts, write battle reports, and soothe the troops' morale. She slept less than 2 shichen a day. In the dead of night, sitting alone in her tent, she would look at the jade pendant Pei Xingzhou had pressed into her hand before he left, and she would feel homesick, missing her parents. Missing Xingyu, missing Pei Xingzhou, missing Ji Yukan. She missed that soft, squishy little dumpling, her chubby little hands, and the way she would smile to reveal 2 tiny baby teeth when she left. Ji Yukan could barely speak. By now, surely she could say mother, couldn't she? Unfortunately, she couldn't hear her call. At least not for now. She wiped away her tears, hung the jade pendant back around her neck, lifted the tent flap, and walked out. The moonlight was dazzling on the sea, like a layer of crushed silver spread across it. In the distance, the pirate fleet lay anchored near the reef, a dark mass like a school of lurking sharks. She stared at the ships for a long time, when suddenly a thought flashed through her mind. This idea was too crazy, so crazy that even she found it hard to believe. But the more she thought about it, the more feasible it seemed, and the more she believed it was the only chance to break the deadlock. Early the next morning, she summoned all the generals and told them her plan. The tent exploded with noise. Night raid on the enemy ship. Young Master GU, are you crazy? That's an entire fleet of ships. How many men do we have in our navy? The enemy outnumbers us greatly. Isn't this just sending them to their deaths? Ji Hung waited for them to finish arguing before calmly speaking. It's not a frontal assault, but a fire attack. The wind has been from the southeast these past few days, which works in our favor. I'll take 30 fire ships downstream. From the upper reaches, slip in under cover of darkness, and set their fleet ablaze. You lie in ambush on the shore. When they abandon their ships and come ashore, they'll be sitting ducks for you. Zhao Daong was the first to jump up in opposition. No way, that's too dangerous. You're a woman. Mid-sentence, he suddenly stopped himself. Everyone in the tent froze, their eyes fixed on Ji Hung collectively. Ji Hung calmly unbound the hair from the head, a cascade of dark silk tumbling down like a waterfall. She stood before the generals, her brows and eyes fierce with valor. Clearly a woman, yet she looked more like a drawn sword than any man present. Yes, I am a woman, but in these few months, how many victories have I won for you? Which battle did I fall behind you? When have I ever failed to be at the front? Woman or not, once you step onto the battlefield, there is only life and death, not men or women. Ji Hung tied her hair back again, her gaze sweeping across everyone's face. Whoever is willing to go with me, step forward. There was a moment of silence in the tent. Zhao Daong was the first to step forward, then the second, the third. In the end, everyone in the tent stood up, and even the old military medic in his 50s raised a trembling hand. Ji Hung looked at them and suddenly smiled. All right, once we finish this fight, we go home. That night, the glow of the fire turned half the sky red. Ji Hung led 30 fire ships downstream, their bows piled with dry grass, pine resin, and incendiary oil. The Wokou scout boats spotted them, but it was already too late. The fire ships, riding the wind, charged into the heart of the Wokou fleet. The blaze, like a ferocious beast awakened, wildly devoured one enemy ship after another. Ji Hung stood on the lead fire ship. Bow fully drawn, the fire cast her shadow onto the sea, stretching it long and large like a war god. A rocket tore through the night sky and struck the main mast of the enemy ship. Fueled by the wind, the fire spread rapidly. The Wokou fleet fell into chaos. Some ships tried to flee but were blocked by fire ships, others collided blindly into one another, only to make the fire burn even fiercer. The screams, the sounds of bodies hitting the water, and the crackling of burning wood mixed together. The Ming army ambushed on the shore, seeing the signal flares, immediately launched their attack. The Wokou leaped from the burning ships, but before they could swim to shore, they were riddled with arrows. Ji Hung's boat had its bottom blown open during the fierce battle, and seawater gushed in with a gurgling sound. Zhao Daong paddled his small boat desperately to come to her rescue. As he reached out to pull her aboard, a stray arrow flew past Ji Hung's ear, shearing off a lock of her hair. Get on, quick! Zhao Daong roared. Ji Hung looked back at the sea of flames. The main fleet of the Japanese pirates was nearly burned to ashes, with only a few damaged ships fleeing in panic. She breathed a sigh of relief and placed her hand on Zhao Daong's arm, about to use his support to climb into the small boat, when she suddenly felt a chill in her chest. She looked down and saw an arrow that had pierced through her shoulder blade from behind, the tip stained with blood, gleaming coldly in the firelight. Zhao Daong's face went pale in an instant. Ji Hung gritted her teeth and managed to climb into the small boat. The arrow was still stuck in her shoulder, the pain causing her vision to go dark in waves, but she clung desperately to the side of the boat, refusing to let go, her voice hoarse. Go, go! The small boat darted left and right through the rain of arrows and finally burst out of the sea of fire. Ji Hung leaned against the boat's hull, feeling the heat in her body slipping away bit by bit. Like sand trickling through her fingers, her consciousness began to blur, and the light and shadows before her eyes became fragmented and hazy. In a daze, she saw Pei Xingzhou standing under the light, looking at her with reddened eyes. If anything happens to me, I hope you will take care of my mother and Xingyu, and look after our daughter Ji Kan. When she said those words, she thought she had prepared herself, but now that it had truly come to this, she realized she was never prepared at all. She hadn't yet seen Ji Kan grow up, hadn't yet heard her call her mother, and hadn't yet held Pei Xingzhou's hand to walk proudly under the sun. She refused to accept it. Zhao Dayong's voice sounded as if it were coming from far away, muffled and indistinct. She could barely make it out. She wanted to say something, her lips moved, but no sound came out. Finally, using the last of her strength, she reached into the front of her robe and grasped the warm jade pendant. Pei Xingzhou, wait for me. Wait for me to come back. 12. The new emperor ascended the throne, and the army that fought against the Japanese pirates returned victorious. It was said that the second young master of the Marquis of Jinghai's mansion was unfortunately struck by an arrow and died during the battle, but the eldest daughter of the Marquis, Ji Yu Heng, arrived just in time, rallied the army, and defeated the pirates. On the day Ji Yu Heng returned to the city, the townspeople lined the streets to welcome her, praising her heroic bearing. The new emperor also issued a commendation. Marquis Jinghai Ji Yu Huayuan was granted the title of Duke Jingguo. Guci, the heir of the Marquis of Jinghai, was posthumously honored as Marquis Jinghai for his meritorious service in resisting the Japanese invaders. Having sacrificed his life for the nation, Pei Xingyu, wife of Guci, was awarded the title of first-class imperial mandate madam for her contributions in transporting provisions. Their daughter Ji Yu Kan was in theft as the Lady of Jing'an County. Ji Yu Heng, daughter of Ji Yu Huayuan, rose to the occasion and defended the southern half of the empire. Her service to the state was so great that she was created Marquis Ninghai, granted an iron certificate of impunity, bestowed the rank of general, guarding the east, and given command over the coastal military affairs of the southeastern region. The court erupted in uproar, with many voices arguing that women must not lead armies nor be in theft as marquises. Pei Xingzhou single-handedly debated a group of court officials, waving his court tablet until it cracked and clattered. Only after stirring up quite a scene did he finally win over the civil and military ministers, leaving them utterly convinced and daring not to utter a single word against Ji Yu Heng's appointment. After court, Pei Xingzhou hurried home. Standing in the courtyard, he stared at the woman holding their daughter and playing with her. Unable to hold back his tears, he embraced her by the waist. You've lost weight. Since you're still alive, why didn't you send more letters home? Did she know that when he heard the news of second young master Ji Yu dying on the coastal battlefield, he nearly coughed up blood? Almost following her to the grave, Ji Yu Heng turned around and smiled, gently touching his cheek. I asked you to wait for me, and I will certainly come back to see you. I am a person who keeps my promises. Moreover, it was a good thing that she had returned as her true female self. She wanted the world to see that whether male or female, as long as one has the ability, anyone can lead troops into battle. As for Xingyu, since Guci was dead, she too was free from now on, no longer confined to the inner quarters. She could go wherever she wished, see whomever she wanted, and do whatever she desired. And Ji Yu Heng can also be happily reunited with Pei Xingzhou. That's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe. If you have any suggestions, feel free to leave them in the comments. See you in the next video.